My Star Empire. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 576 The Art of Cannibalism. No, Your Majesty, I just scratched myself accidentally. The soldier touched his nose and replied. Okay, Emperor Clem shrugged, but did not retract the blade of his scepter. He kept guarding against the soldier in secret. The two continued to walk through the cabin towards the port of the Clem. Along the way, Emperor Clem kept seeing the bodies of Clem's soldiers and some monsters that were broken into pieces. How did the Sith Empire do it? How could so many monsters appear in our warship? Emperor Clem frowned and asked the soldier. We initially suspected that it was the biological weapon secretly released by the Sith soldier who broke into our port when we captured the secret warship of the Sith Empire. However, the biological weapon was activated only when we had a decisive battle. The soldier turned around and replied. At this time, Emperor Clem suddenly saw that the purple marks on the soldier's arm had spread to the soldier's face. The blood vessels on the soldier's face had all become engorged and turned purple. Emperor Clem took 2 steps back, held the scepter across his chest and stared at the Clem soldier. Your Majesty, what are you doing? Before the soldier finished speaking, his muscles bulged, his skin turned into dark black leather, and dozens of sharp teeth grew in his mouth. Emperor Clem did not hesitate at all. While the monster had not yet completely transformed, he used the scepter in his hand to directly penetrate the soldier's head. Damn it, Emperor Clem did not expect that this biological weapon was so contagious. It seemed that the soldiers on this Titan were already in danger. The top priority was to go to the port and leave the warship. Emperor Clem ran quickly towards the port with his scepter, and killed all the monsters he met along the way. At this time, the soldiers in the Clem Empire fleet were also crazy. They found that their former teammates and brothers had all turned into monsters. In order to survive, these soldiers had to personally put an end to the monsters that their comrades had turned into. But they didn't know that in the eyes of their comrades, they had also turned into monsters, and the two sides kept fighting to the death. Emperor Clem finally arrived at the port after killing all the way, but he was then shocked by the scene in the port. Thousands of monsters roamed the huge port. Judging from the remaining power armor parts on these monsters should be the original staff of the port. Emperor Clem roared, jumped down from the high platform with his scepter, and rushed towards the many monsters. Only then did the monsters react and rush towards Emperor Clem. If Emperor Clem could calm down, he would be able to find abnormalities, such as he did not find any long-range weapons along the way. You know, it is impossible for a unit to have no long-range weapons. These long-range weapons did not disappear, but these long-range weapons were blocked from the minds of these soldiers and Emperor Clem. Even if the rifle was right in front of them, they could not find it. In this way, the Clem soldiers holding melee weapons and their emperor fought together. Emperor Clem's special weapons can easily cut through the power armor of Clem's soldiers, but the soldiers' sabers cannot cut through Emperor Clem's imperial robes. Even if the number of soldiers is thousands of times that of the emperor, the advantage is not great due to the gap in equipment. But soon Emperor Clem felt that his body was a little weak. Although the Clem royal family was born strong, and he had been genetically enhanced. But such high-intensity continuous combat still emptied his body, and the speed of his swinging the scepter began to slow down. Emperor Clem knew that he was about to die, and hurriedly pulled out a tube of injection from his leg and stabbed it into his neck, and the strength returned to his body again. Die! 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 Emperor Clem waved the scepter frantically, cutting off the monsters one by one. More than 10 minutes later, the panting Emperor Clem inserted the scepter into the ground and knelt on one knee. There were circles of monster corpses lying around him, and the floor was flooded with blood, a hellish scene. Not bad, not bad. At this moment, Emperor Clem suddenly heard someone appear in front of him. When he looked up and saw the person clearly, his pupils shrank instantly. A young human man in power armor was approaching him with a smile on his face, clapping his hands. If he remembered correctly, this person was the Emperor of the Sith Empire. You, Emperor Clem stared at Mingze in disbelief, unable to speak. Can't guess how I got to your flagship? Do you want to kill me but can't move my body? Mingze smiled and bent down to put his head close to Emperor Clem's head and whispered. Let me let you appreciate your masterpiece first, Mingze said and clapped his hands gently. Emperor Clem felt that the surrounding environment suddenly changed. The monster corpses that had fallen around him suddenly began to twist, and then turned into the corpses of hideous Clem soldiers. "What have you done?" Emperor Clem looked at Li Mingze with anger and said viciously. "What did I do? I didn't do anything. It was you who killed your guards and slaughtered half of the people on the ship." Li Mingze spread his hands and pretended to be innocent. "I will kill you. Kill you." Emperor Clem tried desperately to stand up from the ground and kill Li Mingze. Unfortunately, the intense battle had already exhausted all his strength. Emperor Clem fell heavily to the ground just after he stood up. "Don't resist. You are already a piece of meat on the chopping board." Li Mingze lifted Clem's lizard head with his hand and said with a smile. "You won. You kill me." Emperor Clem closed his eyes. Clem's glory was above everything else. It was better to die directly than to be humiliated. "Kill you? No, I want you to watch the destruction of your empire with your own eyes." Li Mingze shook his head gently and clapped his hands again. Dozens of Sith soldiers appeared out of thin air carrying a metal box and came to Emperor Clem. "What are you going to do?" Emperor Clem roared angrily. "I'm not going to do anything. I'm just going to cut off all the nerves that control your body so that you can quietly appreciate the destruction of the Clem Empire." After Li Mingze finished speaking, he picked up the scepter on the ground and turned to walk towards the bridge of the battleship. "You are a lunatic. A pervert," Emperor Clem roared unwillingly, and then his mouth was covered by the soldiers of the Sith Empire and he could only make a whimpering sound. Chapter 577 Surrender. After Li Mingze walked away, the soldiers used a laser knife to cut off the nerves in Emperor Clem's neck. Then they put Emperor Clem into the metal box dragged over, and inserted tubes for transmitting nutrient solution into Emperor Clem's body. As the transparent shield on the top of the metal box slowly fell, Emperor Clem showed a desperate look. Li Mingze didn't care how Emperor Clem would be treated. He walked through the long corridor and came to the palace in the center of Clem Titan. After entering the hall of the palace, Li Mingze came to the throne and sat down. He stretched out his hand and inserted the scepter in his hand into the groove in front of the throne. At the same time, an unknown instrument was also put on the top of the scepter. "Start cracking the Clem shipboard host." The Clem shipboard host has been cracked. "The control of this battleship has fallen into our hands." Tianyi's figure was projected in front of Li Mingze by the projection in the hall. "How much of Clem's fleet do we control?" Li Mingze asked Tianyi, who appeared. "All the Clem soldiers in the Clem warships have been eliminated by us. Now the fleet of the Clem Empire has fallen into our control." Tianyi showed a victorious smile. "Haha. Very good. Order the fleet to attack the defense device of the ring world, and at the same time order our landing troops to jump over." Li Mingze laughed twice and lay on the throne, with layers of metal wrapped around his body. At this time, all the warships in the Clem fleet have been occupied by the soldiers of the Sith Empire. Tens of minutes later, the warships of the Clem Empire have turned their bows and lined up with the warships of the Sith Empire towards the ring world. The people on the Clem ring world did not know what happened to their empire's warships at this time. Why did their fleet suddenly cease fire, and soon after, they stood together with the fleet of the Sith Empire? Did the fleet surrender? Their emperor is still in the fleet. It shouldn't be. Because the energy of the civilization devourer is limited, mental control did not appear on the ring world. The area of the ring world has exceeded the limit of its control, so Li Mingze just let him control the fleet of the Clem people. "Listen, ground forces and people of the Clem Empire. Your fleet has surrendered, and your emperor has been captured. Put down your weapons and submit to the Sith Empire. If you encounter any resistance, kill them all." Li Mingze used the top authority of the Clem to control all the monitors on the ring world and said loudly. At the same time, Tianyi was also cracking the weapon system on the ring world. Once the cracking was completed, the ring world would fall into the hands of the Sith Empire, and these Clem people would be slaughtered by the Empire. The Clem people on the ring world saw the video and silently put down their work and walked to the street. The Clem military also confirmed what the Sith Empire Emperor said at this time. They really couldn't contact their own fleet. They now only have the defensive weapons of the ring world to protect their safety, but they have lost all the ability to fight back. Even if they can survive with the weapons of the ring world, the Sith Empire will sooner or later conquer the ring world. "Sir, let's surrender," a Clem officer said to his superior. "That's right, sir. We no longer have the ability to fight back. Our fleet has also betrayed the Empire. We can't let our soldiers die in vain," another officer also echoed. The general with the highest rank in the command side took off his helmet and put it on his chest. I agree. All Clem soldiers, please put down your weapons and surrender to the Sith Empire. Don't resist. Don't implicate your comrades and families. After the general finished speaking to the entire army through the communicator, he took out a pistol from his arms. Sir, don't. Several officers saw their commander's intention and rushed to stop him. But it was too late. With a gunshot, the general's body fell weakly on the seat, and a bullet hole in his head continued to ooze blood. After receiving the surrender instructions from the command, Clem's soldiers breathed a sigh of relief and put down their weapons. At this time, Clem's citizens hung their heads in frustration. They had received surrender statements from the military and the government through various channels. Everyone's eyes lost their spirits, and the faith in people's hearts disappeared. A few hours later, landing ships of the Sith Empire continued to fall from the sky, and soldiers of the Sith Empire walked onto the streets of Clem City with guns in hand. The soldiers of the Sith Empire walked in neat steps on both sides of the heavy armored vehicles, and the flags of the Sith Empire held high in the hands of the two leading soldiers fluttered in the wind. The residents of Clem on both sides of the street looked at the Imperial troops passing by them with complicated expressions. As time passed, more and more Sith Empire warships continued to fall from the sky, and dozens of Sith Empire warships floated over each Clem city. Fighter planes flew between the high-rise buildings, shaking the windows of the high-rise buildings. At this time, the Imperial troops had already accepted the surrendered soldiers of the Clem ground forces. One by one, Clem soldiers were escorted by Imperial soldiers through the city, and boos came from the people on both sides of the road. They believed that the reason why their country was defeated was entirely because of the surrender of these soldiers. At this time, seeing the embarrassed figures of these Clem soldiers, these people wanted to rush up and beat them up. However, the Sith Empire soldiers gave up after seeing the prisoners of war. They did not dare to challenge the patience of the new ruler. On the other side, the sword of the Empire accompanied the Titan Clem and slowly landed on the ring world. The Clem was re-embedded into the big pit on the ground, and the metal pillars sank into the ground. The magnificent palace appeared on the ground of the ring world again. A group of high-ranking officials of the Empire took the shuttle from the sword of the Empire to the palace. Your Majesty. Long live your Majesty. In the hall of the palace, many officials of the Sith Empire knelt on one knee and shouted to Li Mingze on the throne. Stand up. Li Mingze waved his hand. Your Majesty, how should we deal with these Clem people? They killed many citizens of our empire in the past, Your Majesty. An official stepped forward and said to Li Mingze. Needless to say, I have already had a way to settle the Clem people. Li Mingze waved his hand. These Clem people are unstable factors. They all advocate violence, bloodthirsty and warlike. He will never leave the Clem people in the empire. Chapter 578, Tomb of Civilization. The reception of the Clem ring world was very easy. With the cooperation of the surrendered troops, the empire took only 3 days to completely control the Clem ring world. From this day on, the last civilization in the Milky Way that could fight the Sith Empire was defeated and destroyed by the Sith Empire. The Milky Way ushered in a long-lost peace. Dear viewers in front of the TV, today is a great day for the Milky Way and a great day for the Sith Empire. Our Sith Empire's army, led by the great Emperor, successfully defeated the Clem Empire. Today, our Sith Empire can be regarded as truly ruling the Milky Way, and the Sith Empire will usher in a golden period of development. Flights from the Empire's colonies to the Clem ring world will be opened in 3 months, and all citizens of the Empire can take flights to the Clem ring world to live and develop. Next, I will lead you to appreciate the exotic scenery of the Clem ring world. In the Sith Empire, the live broadcast of the frontline reporters was played on the holographic screens everywhere. The entire empire was plunged into a sea of revelry. Various companies announced 3 days of paid holidays, and stores in the empire also had crazy discounts. The products that were originally priced at 99 or 190 were all priced at 66. Unlike the citizens of the Sith Empire who were reveling, the leaders of the member states of the Galactic Alliance all felt a hint of danger, but they didn't know what this dangerous breath was, so they had no choice but to give up. On the 3rd day after the Empire took over the Clem ring world, the citizens of the Clem Empire suddenly received a notice asking them to leave the ring world with their luggage. The notice required them to move to the new planet prepared for them by the Sith Empire. Although the Clem people were unwilling, under the tyranny of the Sith Empire, the Clem people began to pack up their luggage and follow the Imperial soldiers to the evacuation points in the center of each city. At the evacuation point, the young Clem man followed the crowd with his luggage and walked to the hall of the evacuation point. After the Sith soldier standing at the door did a security check for him, he ordered him to pack all the luggage on his body and put it in a designated area on the side. Then he was told that his luggage could only be returned to him after he arrived at the destination. The young man was a little angry at first, but after several Sith soldiers pointed their guns at his head, the young Clem suddenly became timid, lowered his head and followed the crowd in front of him into the hall. When he entered the hall, he saw dozens of isolation doors that could only accommodate one person. Every time a person entered, the isolation door would automatically fall. Although the young Clem didn't know the meaning of this isolation door, he still walked in obediently. Just as he stepped into the room and the isolation door behind him closed, his eyes went dark and he lost consciousness. Then the floor under the young man's feet suddenly opened to both sides, and the young man fell down. Following the long pipe, the young Clem fell on a long conveyor belt. There were many Clem people like him on the conveyor belt, and these people lost consciousness like him. At the end of the conveyor belt, mechanical arms grabbed the Clem people and put them in the hibernation cabin on the other side of the conveyor belt. The head of the Clem people who were put into the hibernation cabin was instantly pierced by dozens of filaments, and then the transparent hibernation fluid filled the cabin. The last mechanical arm closed and sealed the hatch of the dormant chamber. In this way, countless Clem people were loaded into the dormant chamber and flowed away along the conveyor belt. In an underground port in the ring world, drones were busy picking up the dormant chambers sent by the conveyor belt and stuffing them into the cargo ships anchored in the port. With the sound of heavy objects hitting the ground, these dormant chambers were violently thrown into the cargo hold, and then neatly arranged by the mechanical arms in the cargo hold. The whole process was efficient and rough. In just a few dozen minutes, the cargo hold of a transport ship was full. After the drones withdrew, the transport ship's tail sprayed flames and slowly flew into the air. The gifts of these passengers were all left in the ring world, waiting to be given to the imperial citizens who came to colonize as a surprise gift package. On the outside of the ring world, transport ships came here from the ring world, got rid of the gravity of the ring world and entered the hyperspace. In a remote star system of the Sith Empire, transport ships continued to jump out of hyperspace and came to the star system called the Tomb. At this time, a six-sided cylindrical space station is floating in the star orbit of this star system. The entire space station is extremely large, with a diameter of 50 kilometers, not to mention its length of hundreds of kilometers. Although the size of this space station is so huge, its construction is very simple. Because this space station is completely an empty frame, the middle of the column is the reactor, and the surrounding space is completely an empty frame for stuffing dormant pods. After a transport ship arrives around the space station, a drone will fly out of the space station to pick up the dormant pods in the transport ship and stuff them into the shelves inside the space station. When the dormant pod slides into place, it will be connected to the space station to become a whole. A single layer of space can fit up to 100 million dormant pods, not to mention that the space of this space station is far more than this layer. Countless hibernation chambers were brought in by transport ships and stuffed into the space station. As time passed, the first floor of the space station was filled, and then the second floor was filled. Residents of various colonies of the Clem Empire also began to board spacecraft and fly to this space station under the threat of the Sith Empire soldiers. 500 million, 1 billion, 10 billion, and 100 billion people. A full 230 billion Clem people were stuffed into hibernation chambers and sent to the space station in the Tomb star system. If the Empire had not been prepared in advance, it would not have been able to provide such a large number of hibernation chambers. This super project lasted for a full 3 months. When flights from various colonies of the Sith Empire to planets in the former Clem Empire and the current Clem star region were opened, there was no Clem person left in the entire Sith Empire. The Clem people just disappeared. Of course, there was still one last Clem person who did not enter the Tomb space station, and that was Emperor Clem, who witnessed the whole process in the nutrient tank. The sword of the Empire brought the Emperor of the Clem Empire, the last Clem person living in the outside world, to the Tomb star system. "What have you done to my people?" Emperor Clem shouted angrily at Mingze in the nutrient tank. Chapter 579 The Virtual Worlds of Various Civilizations. What have I done to your people? No, 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 they are no longer your people. They are now vassals of our Sith Empire. I built this space station specifically for them. The Clem people will gather together in the virtual space and live a beautiful and happy life. Okay, I won't keep you here either. I wish you a happy stay in heaven, Mingze said as he turned off the power of Emperor Clem's nutrient tank. The nutrient tank that lost its energy supply soon dimmed. Emperor Clem felt his brain slowly becoming drowsy, and soon he lost his life. After dealing with Emperor Clem, Mingze turned around and pressed a switch on the console in front of him. When the switch was pressed, the consciousness of the Clem people was connected to the virtual world one after another. In the virtual world, they took a spaceship to a new colony and took back their salutes from the Imperial soldiers. These Clem people will grow and develop on this colony in the virtual world, and finally launch an attack on the Sith Empire, taking back the territory from the Sith Empire bit by bit. In the end, these Clem people will be immersed in the virtual victory. In their virtual world, they will rule the galaxy. The virtual civilization experiment has officially begun. In the control room in the middle of the Tomb space station, a Sith scientist announced loudly to the people in front of the communicator. Many scientists went to their workstations. The virtual civilization experiment is an extended version of a famous brain in a vat concept during the Earth period. Through this plan, the Empire will find the answer to whether a civilization that has been in the virtual world can continue to develop. The Clem Empire, which is slightly different from the Sith Empire's technology tree, is a perfect experimental subject. They are smart and motivated. At the same time, this plan has another consideration, that is, the Clem people's technology is very advanced, which can be seen from their ability to build ring worlds and portals. Although they were defeated by the cheating Sith Empire in the end, their technological advancement cannot be denied. If the Empire forcibly recruited Clem scientists to serve the Sith Empire, these Clem people would definitely not work well, just like the scientists of other civilizations annexed by the Empire. But it is different in the virtual world. In the virtual world, these scientists will continue to serve their country. In order to overthrow the rule and oppression of the Sith Empire, they will definitely show their full spirit and ability. In this way, the Sith Empire can continue to obtain the new technologies developed by the Clem people in secret. By simulating all known rules of the real universe, the virtual world where the Clem people live is almost the same as the real world, and it is not impossible to study technology in it. In this way, the Sith Empire not only solved the resettlement problem of the Clem people, but also continued to obtain the new technologies developed by the Clem people. Such a perfect plan can't help but make Mingze's thinking active. Since the Clem people can enclose them in this way, why can't other civilizations? Thinking of this, Mingze planned to do it. Soon more tomb space stations began to be built around the original tomb space station. These tombs number 2, tomb number 3, tomb number 4, and tomb No. N space stations will be placed in all non-human species in the entire galaxy in Mingze's plan. These civilizations will experience the unification of the galaxy in the virtual world. They will continue to thrive under the surveillance of the Empire and secretly provide the Sith Empire with various new technologies that the Sith Empire did not expect. At the same time, in order to enable these civilizations to grow rapidly, Mingze also plans to let them continue to discover the remains of alien civilizations in the virtual world, so that these civilizations can quickly grow into a unified galaxy civilization, and then it will be the time for the Sith Empire to secretly harvest wheat. Wait, Mingze suddenly felt that this kind of thing was very close to his own experience. He got an empire inexplicably, and then in various coincidences, it grew into such a behemoth in just a few hundred years. Could he also be a brain in a jar? The pen in Mingze's hand suddenly stopped, and he felt a chill rising from his feet. Shaking his head, Mingze threw this matter out of his mind. Even if he was a brain in a jar, what could he do? Could he jump out of the jar and kill the instigator? The two sides are no longer opponents on the same level, okay? Instead of painfully pursuing the truth, it is better to live happily like this. Even if he is really in a virtual world, it is very satisfying to be able to experience the fun of unifying the universe. Tianyi, order the fleets to disperse and start clearing the member states of the Galactic Alliance from the border of our star region. These member states are no longer useful to the Empire, and the Empire will take over the property. You are responsible for arranging people to put them all into hibernation and send them to the cemetery. Try to do this covertly and don't let other civilizations find out. Mingze called Tianyi and instructed. Yes, Your Majesty, our fleet will set off now. Tianyi nodded and disappeared. The Imperial fleet, which had just finished repairing in the Clem Ring world, set sail again, and the soldiers on vacation all return to their respective posts. Next, the Empire's fleet will be divided into 40 groups, and all non-human civilizations will be sent to hibernation chambers one by one. A few months later, the leaders of the member states of the Galactic Alliance finally knew what was wrong with them. The fleet of the Sith Empire descended on the homes of these civilizations, captured all the citizens one by one, and sent them to the transport ships that came with the fleet. These people will be directly hibernated and taken to the cemetery space station. At this time, the leaders of these civilizations realized that they didn't even have an army that could resist a little. When they joined the Galactic Alliance, they had already handed over military power to the Sith Empire. These civilizations have only now discovered the insidiousness of this agreement, but it is too late. Unarmed citizens of various civilizations were pointed at by the Empire's robot troops and lined up to enter the transport ship. Of course, the Sith Empire announced to the outside world that a cosmic disaster is about to break out, and all creatures of civilizations will be sent to the Clan Ring world for refuge. The reason why the Empire sent troops to execute it is to fear that there will be looting and smashing during the evacuation. Citizens of various civilizations who are retreating, please rest assured that our Sith Empire will never hurt you. Indeed, the Sith Empire did not hurt them, but just wanted them to change the virtual world to experience the taste of the Galactic Overlord. The Empire is completely thinking about them. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 580 Golden Development Period. When the people of these civilizations wanted to leave by spaceship, they found that the Sith Empire had closed all the wormhole high-speed channel transfer stations. And the surrounding star systems were filled with warships of the Sith Empire, and they had nowhere to escape. Your Majesty, are we really going to send all races to the grave? In the Imperial Palace, Tianyi came behind Mingze and asked carefully. No, the races that have joined the Empire can be exempted. They have been assimilated by our civilization. Mingze did not turn around. He was reading the report sent back by Tianyi. But, Your Majesty, some races are not aggressive at all, such as the Lot race. Their entire race advocates integration and coexistence with nature. There are not even soldiers in their race. Tianyi bit her lip and whispered. Oh? This type of race can be exempted. You will lead a survey team. All non-aggressive races can be exempted and incorporated into the Empire as third-class citizens. There can only be one civilization in this galaxy, and that is our Sith Empire. Those who are unwilling to be incorporated into our Sith Empire will be sent to the cemetery. Mingze put down the information in his hand and took a sip from the wine glass beside him. Thank you, Your Majesty. Tianyi happily kissed Mingze on the face and ran away happily. Mingze chuckled and looked at the skyscrapers under construction outside the palace. As the population of the Empire continued to surge, the scope of cities in the Ring world became larger and larger. The Imperial Palace that was originally in the wilderness has been slowly surrounded by major cities. Outside the 20-kilometer green belt is the new urban area under construction. The completion of human manufacturing facilities everywhere can bring a huge population to the Empire every month. These people were stuffed into transport ships to receive colonies that no longer had owners. Those civilized colonies that were all moved into the graveyard space station were gradually occupied by humans. The Sith Empire entered an unprecedented period of prosperity, and the development of the entire empire was advancing at a rocket-like speed. In the year 2130 of the imperial calendar, all non-human civilizations with hidden dangers in the Milky Way had moved into the space stations of the Tomb star system, and the territories they left behind had been occupied by new humans. Next to the star in the Tomb star system, hundreds of huge space stations were slowly rotating around the star. The solar panels facing the side of the star provided 50% of the energy for the entire space station, and the remaining energy was provided by the energy extraction station suspended above the star. In order to prevent the abnormal changes of the star from causing the destruction of the Tomb space station group, the Empire installed heavy armor and shields for each space station. The creatures of various civilizations sleeping in these space stations were full of joy. In the virtual world, they had gotten rid of the rule of the Sith Empire and successfully joined forces with other civilizations to occupy a place in the Milky Way. These civilizations did not know that there were tens of thousands of civilizations with the same experience as them, and these civilizations were floating quietly around the stars like them. In the year 2132 of the Sith calendar, the colonies of all civilizations had completed the transformation into colonies suitable for human use. The citizens of the Sith Empire have spread to every corner of the Milky Way. But the Sith Empire has not stopped its exploration, and there are still too many unknown star systems that have not been explored. The 4 major fleets of the Empire are stationed in one arm of the Milky Way. They are responsible for protecting the security of the Empire's territory and sending newly discovered civilizations to the grave. As the Empire's explorers continue to go deeper, new civilizations are discovered by the Empire. As long as these civilizations can leave their own star systems, they will be packed and sent to the grave space station. Although these civilizations want to resist, they are powerless in front of the huge fleet of the Sith Empire and can only let the Sith Empire slaughter them. In the year 2140 of the Sith calendar, the Empire has explored an astonishing 73% of the Milky Way star systems. Most of the star systems are already under the monitoring of the Empire's detectors, and the remaining star systems are also being explored. In addition to expanding the territory of the Empire, the active explorers are also constantly creating rich people. According to the Empire's dividend system, these explorers who discovered planets can obtain shares of the planets. With the explosion of the Empire's population, once these planets were developed, the explorers who discovered them all became super rich overnight. In this case, the Empire's civilian spacecraft and exploration spacecraft became the most popular and best-selling products. In order to get rich overnight, unemployed people joined the Explorers Union one after another, and invisibly cultivated a large number of elite crew members, captains, soldiers, and engineers for the Empire. In the year 2143 of the Imperial calendar, with the help of CLIM technology, the Empire's wormhole highway channel made a revolutionary breakthrough. Not only did the speed of the spacecraft double, but the energy required to maintain the channel was reduced by 90%. The size of the device used to create wormholes was also greatly reduced, which made the wormhole highway channel finally popularized to more star systems. As long as the population of a colony in the Empire reaches more than 100 million, the Empire will build a wormhole highway channel for it, so that the colonists on this planet can move quickly within the Empire. At the same time, under the order of Mingze, a wormhole highway channel business for private companies was also opened. As long as a private company can provide funds for the construction of a wormhole channel, the Empire will build a wormhole channel for it at a designated location. In an instant, commercial communication between the colonies and the Sith Empire began to explode geometrically, and merchant ships were ordered by merchants as soon as they came off the production line. Merchant ships from various colonies shuttled through the wormhole high-speed channels in various parts of the Milky Way. Specialties, minerals, spices, and other items from various planets quickly flowed to the entire Milky Way through the wormhole network. The economy of the Sith Empire ushered in a boom, and billions of companies were registered in a day. Every month, the number of passenger ships of different sizes ordered by the people alone reached 1.3 billion. And the number of transport ships of various models reached 3 billion. This is just the order volume for 1 month. In the absence of war, the shipyards in various colonies are frantically manufacturing spaceships for various companies. EVA's mechanical army took the opportunity to expand to the entire Milky Way. This cancer cell-like robot army can quickly build hundreds of spaceship production lines in each star system. Although the quality of the spaceships manufactured by the robot army is not as good as those printed by the Empire itself, they are better in quantity and cost less money, becoming the first choice for small and medium-sized enterprises. The sales volume of exploration ships for interstellar exploration has also reached nearly 100 million, and explorers who have obtained planetary shares have even formed an exploration fleet. Chapter 581 Crazy Development. In the year 2150 of the Sith calendar, the Sith Empire's exploration of the Milky Way reached 100%. All the star systems in the Milky Way were equipped with the Empire's detectors and were under the surveillance of the imperial government. On this day, the Milky Way finally ushered in a truly unified state, and all star systems became the territory of the Sith Empire. Although the Sith Empire occupied and developed only a small number of planets, no one could stop the Sith Empire's rule over the Milky Way. There was no more war in the Milky Way, and all citizens of the Sith Empire had forgotten about the war and began to indulge in peace. But Mingze knew that the war had just begun. The Empire's deep space outpost had detected traces of spacecraft flying in the void outside the Milky Way. The predicted Zerg is getting closer and closer, and the Empire only has 100 years of development time at most. Your Majesty, do we need to announce the relevant news about the Zerg to the people? In the Imperial Palace, Tianyi came to Li Mingze and asked softly. No hurry, it won't be too late to tell them when there are only 20 years left. They are living a carefree life now. I don't want to disrupt their peaceful life and put too much pressure on them. Li Mingze shook his head gently. But Your Majesty, all the pressure will be borne by you alone. Tianyi grabbed Li Mingze's arm anxiously. It's okay, but you have to help me share the pressure, such as helping me manage the harem. I heard that Li Jielu and Eva had a quarrel again recently. You go to mediate. Li Mingze sighed. The pressure recently was really too great. The development of his empire is far less than that of the ancient civilization. For example, the metal used by the ancient civilization to build a ring world, after so much reverse research, the empire can only produce metal with 80% of its performance. Not to mention the grand century project of building the ring world. As the Zerg continued to approach, his pressure became greater and greater, as if there was a mountain pressing on him and making him breathless. During this period, his clones actually had white hair, which was rare. You have to know that this was a genetically modified clone. After Tianyi left, Li Mingze wrote in his notebook, "Restart the Ark project." That's right, Li Mingze planned to repeat the old trick and build arks carrying the crystallization of the Empire's technology and the seeds of life, and let these arks fly to the world outside the Milky Way. These arks will preserve the fire for the Sith Empire. Once the Empire fails to resist the attack of the Zerg, these arks will be the hope of the Empire. As for the Empire's branch in the 9E universe, it is the last resort to avoid the Sith Alliance and cannot be wasted on the Zerg. Li Mingze has a hunch that this Sith Alliance is much more terrible than the Zerg. An organization spanning hundreds of universes must be much stronger than this Zerg. A few days later, 4 arks began to be secretly built in the 4 major shipyards of the Empire. These arks are different from the huge size of the first generation of the Sith Empire's arks. This generation of arks is just a teardrop-shaped spacecraft with a length of 3,000 meters and a diameter of 1,000 meters. The second generation of the ark will not carry living space. The entire ark will only be equipped with 10 billion human fertilized eggs and cultivation facilities that can cultivate 100,000 people at the same time. At the same time, the ark will carry half of the ark's molecular robots. These robots can not only repair the damaged parts of the spacecraft, but also transform into various tools and weapons after the ark reaches its destination. In addition, the ark is also equipped with the Empire's most advanced hyperspace engine and antimatter reactor, as well as an antimatter main gun that can fire 1,000 times as its defense. The entire ark will be covered with a layer of dimensional armor, which will ensure its safety in the void and give it unparalleled defense capabilities. 10 antimatter missiles that can destroy stars can ensure that it has sufficient deterrence capabilities. The second generation of the ark is also like the first generation of the ark, and it is loaded with 3 clones of Li Mingze. Once arriving at the new galaxy, Li Mingze will move there to take charge of the overall situation. Your Majesty, I think we should first launch some supplies to the surrounding star systems, so that our ark can quickly recover its strength after reaching the destination. Tianyi proposed his own idea after reading the design drawings of the ark. Okay, immediately build 40 unmanned supply ships filled with various supplies and launch them to the surrounding star systems. Even if we are unlucky and encounter danger in the middle, at least 5 or 6 ships will be left to reach the destination safely in the end. Li Mingze nodded and agreed with Tianyi's idea. In 2157 of the Sith calendar, 45-kilometer-long ships filled with various supplies were secretly sent to neighboring star systems around the Milky Way. At the same time, the construction of the ark has also entered its final stage, and the only thing left is to plate it with a layer of dimensional armor. After decades of development, although the cost of dimensional armor has only been slightly reduced, the manufacturing speed of dimensional armor has increased a lot. It is still affordable to add armor to 4 small arks at the same time. In 2160 of the Sith calendar, 4 arks were quietly built on the outermost side of the Milky Way and launched into the void without anyone knowing. The 4 arks are, the Andromeda Ark, which is flying to the Andromeda Galaxy, 2.2 million light-years away from the Milky Way, is expected to arrive in 602 years. The second is the Triangulum Ark, which is flying to the Triangulum Galaxy, 2.64 million light-years away from the Milky Way, and is expected to arrive in 723 years. The third is the Nain Arc, which is flying to the NGC 253 galaxy, 12 million light-years away from the Milky Way, and is expected to arrive in 3,287 years. The fourth is the Bode Arc, which is flying to the Bode galaxy, 13 million light-years away from the Milky Way, and is expected to arrive in 3,561. After leaving a way out for his empire, Li Mingze's pressure was greatly reduced, and it was time to start preparing for the next battle with his Zerg. In 2165 of the Sith calendar, the Sith Empire passed the National Military Act, requiring all citizens to enter the army for a month of military training every year. At the same time, the Empire unlocked the right to use civilian heavy weapons, and private companies could equip their guards with heavy weapons. Although because of the absolute control of the Empire, there were no pirates equipped with imperial weapons in the Empire. But someone discovered a loophole, that is, the Empire cannot control the weapons and warships made by other civilizations. In the process of sending various civilizations to the Graveyard Space Station, a small group of rebels from various civilizations and the Empire rebels joined forces to steal a lot of equipment from other civilizations. These equipment were used by them to make weapons and warships. Because these were not the products of the Empire, Tianyi could not control them at all. Chapter 582 The Zerg Fleet Stops. In this context, a new mercenary union was born, and the original adventurers joined the mercenary union one after another, providing security services for the transport ships of major companies. Li Mingze originally planned to send troops to encircle and suppress these pirates, but he accidentally discovered that since the emergence of the profession of pirates, the unemployed explorers suddenly had a new place to go. In addition, a new industry in the Empire began to flourish, that is, the private armed escort industry. This industry can greatly enhance the combat effectiveness of the people. Once the Zerg attacks, the counter-attack force from the people can still delay the Empire for a period of time. Therefore, Li Mingze let the pirates develop in secret. Of course, it was only on the surface. In the dark, the leaders of the pirates had been secretly arrested by the Shadow Department of the Empire and replaced with clones. Time flies. In the year 2190 of the Sith calendar, with a collision of technologies of various civilizations, the various technologies of the Sith Empire have made major breakthroughs. The production cost of dimensional armor has been reduced by 50%, and the production speed has reached 3 times the original. At the same time, the ring world metal has been completely replicated, and the Empire has been able to produce this high-strength metal on its own. In terms of energy, with the successful construction of the antimatter extraction ring on the ring world, a steady stream of antimatter has been produced, and the new antimatter reactor has also completed large-scale production. In the next period of time, the antimatter reactor will gradually replace the original nuclear fusion reactor of the Empire, providing more abundant energy for the Empire's warships. With more energy supply, the weapons of the Empire's warships have also been upgraded. The power of the new beam weapons and kinetic weapons has increased by 50%, but the size of the weapons has been reduced by 20%. In addition, the charging time of the weapons has been greatly reduced. It only takes 2 minutes to complete the charging of the weapons, which greatly improves the combat effectiveness of the Empire. In the year 2192 of the Sith calendar, the Empire's colonies have been established in various corners of the Milky Way. Because there are too many colonies, there is a huge gap in the population of the Empire. Some of these newly established colonies even have only tens of thousands of people. These colonies are all built in the periphery of the Milky Way, far away from the center of the Empire. Because the star systems on the periphery of the Milky Way have existed for too long, the stars are almost all composed of red old stars. In addition, too many civilizations have been born in these star systems, and only some barren veins of important minerals can be mined. Therefore, the usable value of these colonies is extremely small, and it is not enough to support a population of hundreds of millions. It is also because of this that there are no wormhole transfer stations built in these colonies, and residents can only rely on hyperspace flight to the nearest large colony. At the same time, in the middle area of the Milky Way, wormhole highways have been built almost to the door of each colony, just like the roads on the Earth, extending in all directions. These wormhole highways will play a role in mobilizing the Imperial fleet in the event of a war with the Zerg. On December 31, 2199, Another century came to an end, and the citizens of the empire gathered together to prepare for the arrival of the new century. Unlike the happy crowd outside the window, Li Mingze stood above the palace and looked at the crowd reveling on the city streets not far away. His heart was full of bitterness. The Zerg was getting closer and closer to the Milky Way. I don't know if this carnival is the last carnival in their lives. Outside the Milky Way, the Cape of Good Hope star system. There is only one building of the Sith Empire in this desolate star system, that is the Cape of Good Hope Deep Space Monitoring Station. This monitoring station has been standing in this barren star system for more than 50 years, and it has been paying attention to the latest movements of the Zerg flying towards the Milky Way. At 0000 hours on January 1, 2200, as the bell of the new century rang, a shrill alarm suddenly sounded in the Cape of Good Hope Deep Space Monitoring Station. The staff in the space station ran to their respective workstations in the corridor in a panic. In the control room of the space station, the person in charge of the space station, Major General Lander, supported his hands on the console in front of him with an expressionless face, and stared at the holographic screen on the console nervously. A red light spot on the holographic screen was getting slower and slower until it stopped. Why did the Zerg suddenly slow down? What happened? Major General Lander asked several soldiers who were responsible for monitoring the movements of the Zerg. Report to the commander, we don't know either. Just now, the Zerg fleet began to slow down without any signs, and we didn't find anything abnormal around us, a soldier answered loudly. There must be something wrong with the abnormal situation. Connect to the Empire's emergency hotline immediately, Major General N said in a deep voice. Yes, the soldier immediately started pressing the buttons on the control console. In front of the Sith Empire Palace, Li Mingze was holding a glass of wine and sitting in front of the stage with his wives to enjoy the opera performance of the Queen of Singers. Suddenly, a special ringtone made Li Mingze's expression suddenly change. What happened to your majesty? Qiu asked in a low voice. You continue to watch the show here first. Tianyi, come with me. Something happened in deep space, Li Mingze whispered in Tianyi's ear and then stood up and left the square. Many officials and officers did not care about the departure of Li Mingze and Tianyi. Maybe the emperor just wanted to have some love with the queen? Tens of minutes later, Li Mingze and Tianyi came to the Cape of Good Hope Deep Space Monitoring Station, where the person in charge of the monitoring station had been waiting for a long time. Your Majesty, we just detected that the Zerg fleet has stopped at the same place. They seem to be planning something. Major General Lander led Li Mingze to the control console. What do these bugs want to do? Are they going to stop and repair? Or do they not plan to continue the attack? Li Mingze frowned and asked in confusion. At this time, in the void outside the Milky Way, a fleet composed of dozens of planet-sized hideous creatures was floating in the void. Inside one of the biological warships wrapped in golden shells. 3 humanoid creatures wearing biological shells were kneeling on one knee in an empty hall. The hall was full of wriggling blood vessel-like structures, and in the middle of the hall there was a huge white insect egg hanging in the air. Respected Queen Mother, we have arrived at the designated location, one of the 3 bugs raised his head and said, and only at this time could his true face be seen clearly. Under the 4 pairs of compound eyes was a mouth composed of sharp teeth. Suddenly, the white insect egg hanging in the air squirmed twice, and the egg was cut open from the inside. A bloated insect covered with a heavy shell fell out of the egg, but was held by the 3 kneeling Zerg. The bloated insect squirmed twice and turned into a human. This humanoid form is confirmed to be the most perfect form in the universe. Although its various abilities are mediocre, it does not have too many defects and can also use tools. Her current humanoid body is not her original body. Her original body is actually the mothership under her feet. Chapter 583 Super Rules New Book. Queen, should we use that thing? A Zerg Lord asked cautiously. Yes, I want to make sure that this harvest is foolproof. The Zerg Queen nodded and walked out of the hall. The 3 Zerg Lords hurriedly got up and followed the Queen. A few minutes later, the people arrived in front of a cabin in the center of the Zerg mothership. As the Queen approached, the bone doors continued to retreat to the surroundings, revealing a long and narrow passage. The Zerg Queen walked in along the passage, while the 3 Zerg Lords stood guard at the door. After passing through the 200-meter-long passage, the Zerg Queen came to a secret room of more than 50 square meters. In the center of the secret room was a flower bud-shaped tumor. When the Queen placed her hand on this flower bud, The flower bud slowly spread out to the surroundings, revealing a white cube covered with mysterious patterns inside. "It's time to use you again." The Zerg Queen gently held up the metal cube with her hands and gently stroked the surface of the metal body. "Super Rule New Book, enter the state of preparation." As the Zerg Queen whispered, the lines on the metal cube began to glow red. The Zerg Queen turned around with the metal cube in her hand and walked through the passage towards the bow of the mothership. The three lords loyally guarded the Zerg Queen on her left and right and behind her. The four people took the teleportation pod and walked for half a day before arriving at the observation deck at the front of the mothership. Through the transparent shell in front of the observation deck, the Zerg Queen and the three lords could already see the beautiful Milky Way. Rule restrictions on weapons are activated. Rule restrictions: all long-range weapons in the Milky Way must not reach 1,000th of the speed of light within 100 years. Keywords: 100 years, Milky Way, long-range, weapons, light speed, 1,000th. The Zerg Queen held the metal cube and pointed it at the slowly rotating Milky Way in front of the window and whispered. "The rules are restricted. The speed of all long-range weapons in the Milky Way cannot exceed 1,000th of the speed of light. Within 100 years, the weapons are activated. The system has entered a dormant charging state. It is expected to be fully charged in 3,832 years. With a last voice, the red light on the surface of the metal cube disappeared. The Zerg Queen did not know the origin of this metal cube. She stole it from the Zerg system. After becoming a rebellious Zerg, she studied it for thousands of years before discovering that this metal cube needed human genes to activate. This is why she created this human clone. This weapon can modify a rule within a galaxy. The wider and more complex the modified rule is, the more energy it consumes and the longer it takes to charge. In order to use this new super ruled book when harvesting other galaxies next time, the Zerg Queen can only limit the speed of long-range weapons. If the long-range weapons are directly limited, this thing may have to dormant for tens of thousands of years. Is that all? The three Zerg lords looked at the metal cube in the Queen's hand with some disbelief. What about the special effects? Even if there is no beam of light shooting towards the Milky Way, this metal cube should at least emit some photoelectric effects. It's done? It's effective? The three lords were confused. "Queen, are you sure it's effective?" a lord asked cautiously. "Nonsense, I've used it twice. How can I not know if it's effective? When the red light disappears, it means it's effective. In the next 100 years, the flight speed of all long-range weapons in the Milky Way cannot exceed 1,000th of the speed of light." The Queen Mother returned to the secret room holding the metal cube that had lost its luster. After putting the metal cube back into the tumor, the door of the secret room began to close layer by layer, and the entire corridor became a solid wall in a few seconds. At this time in the Sith Empire, a Sith Empire fleet was encircling a pirate fleet. The two sides were fighting happily, and beams of light cut through the sky and shot at each other's warships. At this moment, the speed of the beams shot out from the muzzles suddenly slowed down by 1,000 times. The attack that was originally unavoidable was easily avoided. In shock and confusion, both sides could only switch to railguns, and one shell after another was accelerated by electromagnetic force and shot at the other side's warships. However, the speed of these shells is the same as the beam just now, only a few tens of times faster than the original speed. "What happened?" the commander of the Sith Empire fleet asked the officer on the bridge loudly. "I don't know, sir, but the speed of all our weapons has been limited. The fastest can only reach 1,000th of the speed of light." An officer looked at the holographic screen and replied, "Is there an abnormal astronomical phenomenon in a star field? Report it to the command center immediately." The commander instructed the officer to connect to the command center's communication. The same thing happened in various parts of the Empire. The Imperial soldiers who were fighting monsters and pirates found that the speed of their weapons was far less than before. In the past, they could still shoot wherever they pointed, but now there is a slight delay. If this delay is not noticeable to ordinary people, these reinforced soldiers can still feel it clearly. Reports of abnormal phenomena in the Empire were sent to the Empire's command center like snowflakes. This is the Imperial Weapons Laboratory. The speed of all the weapons we are researching is limited to 1,000th of the speed of light. This is the Imperial Mine number 13. The efficiency of our mining and extraction beams has decreased. This is the Imperial Fleet number 99,318. When we are encircling pirates, the speed of all weapons is limited to 1,000th of the speed of light, including missiles. Various reports flooded the command center's server. Because of the seriousness of the situation, The command center immediately notified Li Mingze. When Li Mingze received the information, he took out a pistol from his waist and shot at the end of the corridor. The beam fired by the pistol is limited to 1/1000th of the speed of light. Your Majesty, the report is correct. Tianyi analyzed the beam of the pistol through the sensor in the corridor and nodded to Li Mingze. Damn it. What happened? Tianyi immediately summarized the areas where the speed of weapons is locked according to these reports. Li Mingze put the pistol back to his waist angrily. He knew that things would not be so simple, because not all objects have speed limits. The speed of natural light and running spacecraft can exceed 1/1000th of the speed of light. This means that this limit is only for long-range weapons, and this matter is definitely man-made. Chapter 584, Instantly Obsolete Battleship. Your Majesty, the Zerg fleet has accelerated again, and this time they are even faster. It is estimated that it will only take 20 years to reach the Milky Way. Tianyi suddenly interrupted Li Mingze's meditation and reminded him. No matter what the reason for the speed limit of the weapons is, it is definitely related to the upcoming Zerg. After the Zerg fleet stopped, our long-range weapons became unusable. It must be their doing. Tianyi, have you summarized the scope of the impact of this incident? Li Mingze asked again after angrily hitting the wall. It has been summarized, Your Majesty. The scope of impact is the entire Milky Way. Everywhere in our empire has been affected. Now our empire's long-range weapons have all lost their original speed. Whether it is beam weapons or ballistic weapons, they can be easily dodged within the original range. In order to make the original weapons have a sufficient hit rate, we need to fix the distance of the battlefield within 30 kilometers, so that the time from the launch of the weapon to the hit is only 1/10 of a second, and the probability of dodging will be greatly reduced. Tianyi sighed and reported the calculated results to Li Mingze. 30 kilometers, Li Mingze frowned deeply. You know, space war is not a battle on the ground. From the perspective of the universe, a distance of 30 kilometers is almost a head-on battle. The warships of both sides accelerated and collided in less than a second. Any evasion at this distance is a joke. No matter how the Zerg did it, they successfully forced the next battle back to the naval battle mode of the Earth period. The long-range weapons of the Imperial fleet are not even as good as some weapons of the Earth era. You must know that the warships are not affected. These warships can even reach 30% of the speed of light in battle. If you don't fight face-to-face, your weapon may just be launched and the opponent has moved away from the original position. Your Majesty, all the weapons of our empire are equivalent to failure, and the original warship design is no longer suitable for the next possible battle. Although we don't know how long this restriction can last, we have to prepare for the worst. All weapons and warships of the Empire need to be redesigned to adapt to the next new battle mode, Tianyi said to Li Mingze with a serious expression. Immediately summon all the major weapons researchers and ship designers of the Empire. Also, isn't there a game copy in the game fantasy that simulates naval battles during World War II? Bring me the best ship designer in this game copy immediately. Li Mingze threw his imperial robe and walked towards the elevator. Ryan's was originally just an ordinary otaku who stayed at home, but since the Empire launched the game fantasy, he has devoted all his heart and soul to it. Because he studied the major of space battleship design in college, coupled with his excellent imagination, the space battleship he designed was very popular in the game. But as time passed, Ryan's gradually lost interest in space battleships. At this time, the newly launched ancient naval battle copy in the game attracted his attention. He began to enter this copy that tells about all naval battles on ancient Earth, from World War I to World War II to modern wars. This day, he was perfecting his newly designed battleship, and suddenly the doorbell rang at home. Who is it? Ryan's withdrew from the consciousness infiltration machine, turned over and walked towards the door. When he came to the front door, he found the figures of 3 Imperial officers on the holographic screen. Why are you looking for me? I haven't done anything wrong. Seeing the serious expressions of the 3 officers, Ryan's began to panic. He didn't remember what bad things he had done. Mr. Ryan's, the country needs you. It's time to serve the Empire. The leading officer took out a paper document from under his arm and held it in front of the camera. The document read Special Conscription Order, First Class Citizen Ryan's. Immediately and unconditionally follow the officer to report to the Imperial Command. 2 lines of large characters clearly caught Ryan's eyes. How can someone like me join the army and contribute to the Empire? Ryan's was so excited that he stuttered when he saw the conscription order. Originally, he had been in the Empire camp in the game, and he also wanted to join the army in reality, but because he was a naturally born Sith, he was the only son in the family, and he did not meet the Empire's only sons cannot join the army condition. I'm going with you now. Do I need to carry luggage? Ryan said excitedly and incoherently. No, the Empire has prepared all the necessary items and new military uniforms for you. When you are ready, we will take you to meet His Majesty the Emperor, the officer said and stuffed the documents back into the folder. Lawrence hurriedly opened the door and stood in front of the three officers. What are you waiting for? Let's go, Lawrence rubbed his hands and said expectantly. The officer nodded, turned around and took Lawrence to the airport platform in front of his house. A black-painted military shuttle slowly descended from the air, and the door on one side of the shuttle opened upwards, revealing the neat sofa seats inside. After the officer took Lawrence into the shuttle took off and flew towards the location of the Imperial Palace, the highest command center under the Imperial Palace. Countless officers were busy shuttling in the corridors. Lawrence, who had changed into new military uniform and passed 5 security checks, was taken to the command center by the officer. It's so cool to be able to see His Majesty the Emperor in person. Lawrence secretly waved his fists twice. Follow closely. You don't want to be arrested as a spy, do you? The officer turned his head and glanced at him in a low voice. Lawrence hurriedly followed the officer's footsteps and walked forward. A few minutes later, after passing a circular traffic circle at the end of the corridor, Lawrence followed the officer to a 5-meter-high metal gate. The beautiful patterns carved on the metal gate and the 12 guards standing upright around it all indicate that this is the heart of the highest command center. Long live His Majesty! Long live the Empire! The officer saluted the 2 officers guarding the gate. Long live His Majesty! Long live the Empire! Your Majesty has been waiting inside for a long time, the 2 officers said, and then stretched out their hands to slowly open the door, revealing a 50-meter corridor. There was a statue every 1 meter in the corridor. Lawrence looked around curiously. He didn't know that these statues were all guard robots, and these robots were all ready to attack. Once Lawrence made any bad moves, they would attack directly. Chapter 585 New Requirements. Your Majesty, I've brought Lawrence here. The officer came to the door of the room and knocked on it loudly. Let him in, Mingze responded. The officer stretched out his hand to open the door, made a gesture of invitation, and Lawrence hurriedly walked into the room. When Lawrence entered the room, he saw more than a dozen people wearing military uniforms like him, but without any military atmosphere, standing in front of the desk. And sitting behind the desk was Mingze himself. Long live His Majesty! Lawrence was startled and saluted hurriedly. Okay, everyone is here. The information you are going to access next is the highest level of secrets of the Empire. You must never disclose it to the outside world. If the information is leaked for any reason, you and your family and friends will evaporate from this world. Do you understand? Mingze said loudly to the 15 young people with a serious face. I understand. Lawrence and others hurriedly straightened their bodies and answered firmly. Very good, follow me. Mingze waved his hand and turned to walk to one side of the room. After detecting Mingze coming, the wall on one side of the room melted into a pool of liquid and spread to both sides. Passing through this door, Lawrence and others came to a conference room of several hundred square meters. In the middle of the conference room was a large round table with nearly 100 seats around it. Following Mingze's signal, Lawrence and others sat down in the designated seats, and then a series of light screens flashed, and the originally empty seats were filled with scientists from the Empire. The meeting officially begins. The content of the meeting is top secret at the SSS level. You will be isolated for 20 years after the meeting, and at least 2 robots will follow you for monitoring every day. I will briefly explain the current situation to you. Mingze waved his hand after speaking, and a holographic projection of the Empire's starting point ring world appeared in the air. Our current imperial capital, the starting point ring world, is, as I believe you all know, a relic that our empire discovered by chance. The builders of this miraculous building have been lost in the long river of history. The reason they perished was because of a race called the Zerg. This Zerg is not a brainless race with obvious weaknesses that you have come into contact with in novels and movies. As Mingze spoke, the holographic screen in the middle of the conference table turned into hundreds of insect-like creatures of various shapes and forms. The Zerg are an interstellar race led by a queen. Their queen completely controls this huge biological empire at the genetic and spiritual levels. In addition to the cannon fodder type Zerg, According to the records of ancient civilizations, ordinary members of the Zerg also have their own consciousness, but their consciousness can be unconditionally controlled and deprived by the Queen. In addition, the relics of ancient civilizations also mention the two main classifications of this Zerg. The two major classifications are the combat type with a body structure like a beast and the tool type with a body structure close to that of primates. The combat type Zerg possesses combat capabilities far beyond ordinary people, and the humanoid Zerg are good at using all kinds of tools, and are no different from us technological civilizations. While the Zerg are constantly devouring and harvesting various civilizations, they are also using the tool-type Zerg to absorb the essence of technology from various races. They are no longer a simple biological civilization. Mingze said this and played a precious battle scene left by an ancient civilization. A silver warship with a clear technological appearance flew towards the fleet of the ancient civilization. The fleet of the ancient civilization did not suspect that the warship was a Zerg warship at first. But when the warship approached, tens of thousands of metal balls were shot out from the warship. After flying into the air, these metal balls turned into ring structures. Then small portals appeared in the ring structure, and countless self-destructing Zergs swarmed out of these portals like a swarm of bees. Just when the fleet of the ancient civilization wanted to attack these self-destructing Zergs, a shield suddenly stretched out in front of the warship that had just flown in to block all attacks. Under the cover of this shield, the self-destructing Zergs slowly approached the fleet of the ancient civilization. The next scene was a one-sided massacre that was unbearable to watch. As you can see, this Zerg has perfectly integrated electronic technology and their biotechnology, and this Zerg is now approaching our Milky Way. Mingze waved his hand again after speaking, and a red dot that was constantly approaching the Milky Way appeared on the screen. A few days ago, I don't know what means this Zerg fleet used, but all long-range weapons in our galaxy were limited to 1,000th of the speed of light. What does this mean? It means that all our original tactics for beyond visual range combat are no longer effective. In the next battle with the Zerg, our original weapons will lose their best effect, and the design of the battleships is outdated. This is why I recruited you. We need to redesign the battleships and weapons. The original design that focused on frontal defense and attack is no longer suitable. All the battles from now on will be carried out in close combat, Mingze said solemnly to everyone. Your Majesty, are you saying that the work of designing a new battleship will be handed over to us? Lawrence said in disbelief. That's right, you are the only one who has participated in the design of interstellar battleships and then participated in the design of battleships from World War I to World War II. I need you to provide valuable suggestions to the battleship designers of the Empire and assist them in completing the design of the Empire's new battleships. Mingze nodded in affirmation. Next, I just need you to design a battleship. The requirements for this battleship are that the size should not be too large, the armor should be thick, and the combat method is close combat. Mingze said this with his careful consideration. Designing only one battleship is to speed up the design of the battleship and make the design of this battleship perfect. At the same time, the requirement of small size is to be able to plate a layer of dimensional armor for a small number of battleships. The Empire will change the situation of building larger and larger battleships in the past, and the battleships produced in the future will be miniaturized. Your Majesty, I have a different opinion. Lawrence suddenly raised his hand. Speak up. Mingze looked at Lawrence curiously. Your Majesty, since long-range weapons cannot be used, what is the judgment of this weapon? Does it refer to all battleships, drones, fighters, artillery, or is it limited to beam weapons and ballistic weapons? If drones are not judged as long-range weapons, then can we vigorously develop aircraft carriers? After all, aircraft carriers are the kings in this kind of battle. Lawrence pushed his glasses for pretending and said. Chapter 586 New Design Concept. Mingze's eyes lit up. Indeed, if drones were not restricted, the Empire could completely replace missiles with drones. As soon as he finished speaking, a drone mothership in space began the experiment. There were two types of drones participating in the experiment. One was a fully automatically controlled drone, and the other was a drone remotely controlled by a person. And two of each type of drone began the experiment, one carrying ammunition and the other without ammunition. A few minutes later, the results of the experiment were transmitted back to the laboratory. Among the four drones, the automatically controlled drone without ammunition could break through the speed limit of 1,000th of the light beam. Once equipped with ammunition, the speed of this drone will be limited to the maximum speed. The same is true for drones remotely controlled by people. After carrying ammunition, they cannot break through the speed limit. On the other hand, the manned fighter on the other side can break through this limit regardless of whether it carries ammunition or not. The experimental results are out. Only manned fighters can break through the limit, Li Mingze sighed and said to everyone in the conference room. Your Majesty, in this case, we not only need to design new warships, we also need to update our aircraft carriers, Lawrence suggested to Li Mingze after thinking for a moment. Yes, in addition to new warships, we also need to update our aircraft carriers and carrier-based aircraft. If you need any resources, just apply directly. All the databases and materials of the Empire are open to you. Li Mingze turned and left the meeting room. In the following days, Lawrence and a group of designers and scientists stayed together every day to discuss the design of new warships and weapons. First of all, a new weapon design was proposed. That is, if the range is no longer pursued, the caliber of the weapon can be greatly improved, and the power of the weapon is also the same. The design concept of the new weapon is to be able to sink the opponent's warship with one shot. At the same time, according to the information left by the ancient civilization, the Zerg's warships are mainly composed of biological warships, and their recovery ability is extremely strong, so the shells fired do not need to pursue extreme armor-piercing ability. The Zerg's warships can quickly repair the small wounds caused by the penetration of armor-piercing weapons. At this time, the rum bullets that were banned during the Earth period came into the eyes of scientists. The Empire's new weapon is an orbital accelerator, but unlike the previous orbital accelerator, it shortens the acceleration track while greatly expanding the diameter of the muzzle. The barrel of an orbital accelerator cannon is now only 15 meters long, but its diameter reaches 3 meters. The design of the rum bullet has also been applied to the ammunition of this weapon. This new weapon called the Crusher uses bullet-shaped shells. The head of the shell is not streamlined, but a hollow shape similar to the rum bullet, with sawtooth all around. This shell will first pass through the acceleration track for acceleration, and the propulsion device at the tail will also ignite the moment it leaves the muzzle, allowing it to reach 1/1000th of the speed of light after leaving the muzzle. When this shell attacks the biological warship, it will first tear the opponent's armor, and then shoot the solid warhead in the shell into the body of the biological warship, and explode inside the warship at the same time. Moreover, this solid warhead also carries a special material that will burn when heated. The warship hit will not only be physically hit, but also experience the feeling of burning in the body at a temperature of thousands of degrees. In this way, the wound area and destructive power produced will be far greater than that of an ordinary solid warhead. In addition, special bullets filled with antimatter were also designed. This type of warhead has enhanced armor-piercing ability. Once it penetrates the opponent's armor, it can release antimatter in the opponent's body. Bang! After a burst of explosions, the warship hit will turn into fireworks. Shortly after these two types of shells were developed, Lawrence proposed the new warhead. That is a crushing warhead assembled with hundreds of sawtooths made of ring-world metal. This warhead with a fusion reactor inside can provide a steady stream of energy for the sawtooth on the head, allowing this warhead to wander continuously in the body of the Zerg warship. Use the meat grinder on its head to completely crush the fragile interior of the Zerg warship. In the end, this shell can also directly detonate the reactor to create a small nuclear explosion. After the design of the Crusher weapon was completed, scientists began to design a new warship based on the characteristics of this weapon. The previous design concept of focusing on frontal defense and attack was abandoned. The new warship will focus on frontal and lateral defense, and all weapons will be located on both sides of the ship and on the upper and lower decks of the warship. In this way, as long as a battle breaks out, the Empire's warships can exert their combat effectiveness to the maximum level, even if they are in close combat with the enemy. Weapons in the four directions of up, down, left, and right can attack enemies around at the same time, and even if the enemy is on one side of the warship, it can ensure that 3/4 of the weapons can attack the target. In addition to this new weapon layout, the new Empire warships are also designed with rams. The triangular rams that are wide at the top and narrow at the bottom will be plated with an additional layer of dimensional armor. Once a collision is required, the new Empire warship can be inserted into the enemy's fleet like a spear. In addition to these weapons, the high-rate close-in defense guns have also been thickened and shortened in caliber, and the original defense range of hundreds or thousands of kilometers has been reduced to 200 kilometers. These close-in defense guns will also serve as anti-aircraft weapons. The original Empire's beam weapons, electromagnetic rail weapons, and ballistic weapons have all disappeared on the newly designed warships. The newly designed Empire warships can be said to be designed entirely for close combat. The new warship is also the same as the Imperial Glory. The entire warship only has a dormant compartment and a war compartment. There is no living space or warehouse, and the volume of the entire warship has been compressed to the extreme. At the same time, the entire battleship is kept streamlined as much as possible, without any extra edges and corners, in order to reduce the material used for dimensional armor. In addition to the new battleships, the Empire's drone carriers have also been upgraded and redesigned. The original drones are no longer suitable for the current battlefield, and the ordinary aircraft carriers that were originally abandoned by the Empire have been found again from the archives and upgraded. The newly designed aircraft carrier is 10 kilometers long and 3 kilometers wide. The entire aircraft carrier can carry 20,000 carrier-based aircraft, and it is also responsible for providing supplies and repairs for the new battleships. Rather than an aircraft carrier, it is better to say that it is a comprehensive combat supply command ship. Although its size makes it impossible to equip dimensional armor, the Empire has designed a heavy armor of 300 meters thick and a shield comparable to that of a Titan. According to the plan, each fleet will consist of 12 new battleships and 3 aircraft carriers. Once the enemy is discovered, the carrier-based aircraft on the aircraft carrier will attack first, and when the enemy gets close, the new battleship will engage in close combat, and the aircraft carrier will withdraw from the battlefield. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 587 Spartan Warrior. When it comes to aircraft carriers, we have to mention the new carrier-based aircraft. The new carrier-based aircraft adopts a shuttle-shaped design. The head of the fighter is a laser drill used to dig underground passages. Once necessary, the new fighter can enter the enemy warship by drilling. This new nose can also allow the fighter to drill underground, and its fuselage also hides 2 pairs of X-shaped cross wings. Once it enters the planet's atmosphere, the wings will unfold to provide it with lift and save energy. The new carrier-based aircraft can be said to be omnipotent. When the manufacturing cost of dimensional armor decreases, these carrier-based aircraft will also be equipped with dimensional armor. In the year 2203 of the Imperial calendar, the Empire suddenly issued a recruitment letter to the active and retired soldiers of the Imperial Marines. The Empire is about to hold a competition that all soldiers in the army must participate in. The content of the competition ranges from fighting skills, shooting, weapon use, vehicle driving, field survival ability to mental endurance limit, etc. Once you get the top 100 in the competition, you will be recruited into the Spartan force. That's right, this Spartan unit is a special unit designed by Mingze based on a game he played on Earth before, Halo. Each Spartan warrior will be equipped with the Empire's S-shaped power armor, an upgraded version that can run away without damage, and their armor will be coated with a layer of dimensional armor. Each Spartan warrior will also be equipped with a 1.5-meter-long sword, which can not only carry out physical attacks, but also create a light blade at the blade, and the entire sword can heat up to a high temperature of 4,000 degrees. In addition to this sword, each warrior also has 2 light blades that pop out of his arms, and 2 fully automatic shotguns. The long-range weapon is a Gauss rifle. The ammunition of the rifle is a special armor-piercing bullet, and the inside is also filled with high-explosive energy modules. Each bullet is a combination of armor-piercing plus high-explosive bullets. A month later, combat skills competitions ordered by His Majesty, the Emperor himself, began to be held in various imperial colonies. In this competition, each military region will first compete, and 2 winners will participate in the competition on their planets. The top 3 soldiers on each planet will advance to the Star Zone competition, and each Star Zone will select the top 500 to participate in the final Imperial Finals. The Imperial Finals will finally select the top 100 to join the Spartan troops. On the Imperial Ring world, as the most elite force of the Empire, the Imperial Guards began the first round of competition in a military base. Because the Guards were originally selected from the best to protect Mingze, and each guard was once the first in the army, the Imperial Guards were treated as a separate Star Zone, and the top 500 best soldiers will be selected from them. In the huge training ground, Hundreds of thousands of elites who had been selected from each class stood neatly on both sides of the training ground. Elites of the Empire, the next part of your competition is the close combat. The training ground will be divided into 100 sections, with 10 soldiers in each section. We will deploy combat robots into the venue, and hitting the fatal parts of these robots will paralyze them. You will get 1 point for each robot paralyzed. The total time of the competition is 5 minutes. After the host finished speaking, 100 sections appeared in the middle of the training ground, and the Imperial Guards who were ranked at the front walked into the training ground in groups of 10. The Imperial Guards are worthy of being the strongest soldiers in the Empire. As soon as the robots were deployed, they could be seen being knocked down and paralyzed on the ground. 5 minutes are up. The highest scorer has a total of 630 points. On average, 2 robots can be knocked down in 1 second. The lowest score is 480 points. The gap with the first place is a bit obvious, but the points lost in close combat can be regained from shooting and other events. Don't be discouraged, contestants. The highest and lowest scores appeared on the big screen behind the host. The combat competition was soon over, and the next was the shooting competition. Because the weapons have a long range, the competition venue was moved to the wild. A plane was divided into 10,000 pieces. All the contestants needed to take a spaceship to go to their own venues. The second item is the moving target shooting competition. The competition lasts for a total of 5 minutes. The moving speed of the target in the first minute is 20 meters per second. The moving speed in the second minute is 40 meters per second. The moving speed in the third minute is 60 meters per second. The moving speed in the fourth minute is 80 meters per second. The fifth minute is 100 meters per second. 1 point for each target in the first minute, 2 points for each in the second minute, 3 points for each in the third minute, and so on. The competition begins now, the host yelled, and drones rushed out of the underground passage. Because it was the first minute, the speed of each drone was only 20 meters per second. The contestants held the guns with both hands and kept pulling the trigger around and in the air. Everyone hit the target with every shot. The same was true in the second minute. The shooting accuracy and speed of all the soldiers did not decrease at all. But in the third minute, some people began to make occasional mistakes. By the fourth minute, the contestants' shooting speed was greatly reduced. Originally, they could hit 6 or 7 targets in 1 second, but now they could only hit 2 or 3 targets. By the fifth minute, most people's shooting speed had dropped to 2 targets per second, and the error rate began to rise. Over time, the target speed is 120 meters per second. Hitting the green light adds 5 points, and hitting the red light subtracts 3 points, the host suddenly shouted, and lights began to appear on all the drones. The sudden change did not disturb the contestants. Their extraordinary reaction ability prevented them from making any mistakes, and no one shot the red light target. This game is evenly matched. It seems that everyone has the most training in shooting. The next game will test your ability to use various weapons. The best soldiers are those who can master various weapons the fastest. After the host said this, the weapons in the soldiers' hands began to wriggle and turned into a variety of new weapons. However, this did not pose a problem for the elite soldiers of the Empire. They got used to the recoil and accuracy of the new weapons in just a few seconds. After the shooting competition is over, the next competition is the driving competition. All contestants will change 20 different modes of transportation on a 200-kilometer track. The first person to reach the finish line will get a full score of 1,000 points, and 1 point will be deducted for every second after that. The entire track includes cities, waters, deserts, mountains and other terrains on all planets. Even gas planets are simulated in an indoor venue. Chapter 588. The competition ends. The next competition was the driving skills competition, which involved driving fighter planes and mecha combat. An excellent fighter not only had to be familiar with driving skills, but also had to be able to drive various equipment to fight. The next competition was the outdoor survival competition, where 10,000 people would be put into the indoor venues simulating the environments of various planets. These 10,000 people would be unarmed, and all weapons would be obtained from nature, and they would attack each other. 100 points would be awarded for each person they killed, and 100 points would be added for each person they survived, and the scores would be included in the final total score. This was a difficult task for these elites, as the combat effectiveness of everyone present was almost the same, and the next thing they had to rely on was various strategies and poisonous plots. Everyone racked their brains and used all their tricks, and various traps and weapons were made. 3 days later, the remaining 100 people walked out of the venue, including hunters who killed more than a dozen contestants, and hiders who hid from the hunt by hiding. But in any case, they survived and scored points, which was very critical for the final competition for the top 500. After all the skill competitions, the last competition will be held, which is to test the soldiers' psychological endurance. Through the consciousness infiltration machine, various images that are unbearable to the mind are created, and the brain activities of these soldiers are monitored at the same time. Once someone can't hold on, the machine will be turned off, and everyone can add 1 point for every second they hold on. You must know that the consciousness infiltration machine will not create any simple difficulties to test a contestant's minds. In the consciousness infiltration machine, time is slowed down to 1/12, and here the soldiers will experience the abuse and slaughter of their comrades and their relatives and friends. If you survive these, the next is the various tortures used for interrogation on Earth. If you can survive these tortures, then these contestants will be deprived of hearing, vision, and smell and put in a spherical room with a smooth surface. The longer you stay here, the easier it is to have hallucinations. 5 minutes later, basically all the contestants made it to the spherical room, but without any hearing, vision, or smell. These people could not stand it after persisting in the room for a few days, and their brains began to work wildly. The medical officer on the side hurriedly pulled the contestants who couldn't bear it out of the consciousness infiltration device. Then they began to give these players restorative psychological treatment, erasing their memories. 3 days later, the monster player who had been in the spherical space for more than a month finally couldn't bear it anymore and was pulled out by the medical staff. At this point, the competition within the Imperial Guards was finally over, and the strongest 500 people were selected from the 10 million Imperial Guards to enter the finals. At this time, the top 500 selected from each star region also entered the finals. A total of 3,000 people from the 5 major star regions of the Empire plus a guard entered the finals. The star regions were replanned. Each arm of the Milky Way was a star region. The center of the Milky Way and the surrounding planets were the Silver Core star region, and there were also the Orion Arm star region where the capital of the Empire was located, the Centaurus star region where the former New Human Federation was located, the Perseus star region where the Clem Empire was located, and the Swan star region. You must know that the Empire's active Marines have reached an astonishing 20 billion people, spread across 150,000 colonies in the Milky Way. These 3,000 people were selected from these 20 billion soldiers. Each person is almost 1 in 6 million. And these 3,000 people will have the final competition to select the strongest 100 people. Because the level of these 3,000 people is not too different, the competition also includes intelligence tests, genetic compatibility tests and other content in the normal process. 3 months later, 2,900 people return to their respective troops in frustration, but they will at least be promoted 2 levels after returning, not for anything else, just because they are one of the strongest soldiers. The selected 100 people were secretly sent to a secret military base on Nuwa Star. Mingze has been waiting here for several days. He has carefully studied the videos of the competitions in various star regions. Now he can finally see these strongest warriors of the Empire. A dreadnought, escorted by several dreadnoughts, slowly sailed into the underground port of Nuwa Star. These elites are the treasures of the Empire and cannot afford any mistakes. When these soldiers walked down the dreadnought in neat steps, they saw His Majesty the Emperor coming towards them. Long live His Majesty! All the soldiers stood at attention and shouted. Very good, you are the strongest soldiers of our Empire. Well done, our Empire is about to face a great crisis. I think Queen Tianyi has already told you on the way here, you 100 people are the hope of our Empire, and a sharp knife of our Empire. I need you to be able to appear on any battlefield in the Empire where you are needed at any time. Are you determined to sacrifice your lives for the Empire? Mingze asked loudly while looking at the 100 strongest warriors of the Empire. We have this determination. The soldiers held their chests high to show their determination to sacrifice themselves for the Empire. Very good, next you will receive all-round strengthening and training, and you will not be able to contact the outside world for the next 10 years. The rest is up to you. Mingze patted Eva's shoulder and turned away. Soon the 100 soldiers were taken to the physical strengthening room in the base. All the soldiers took off all their clothes and lay in the transformation cabin. After the hatch of the transformation cabin was closed, Eva winked at the scientist next to him. The scientist pressed the button with understanding. The soldiers in the transformation chamber gradually lost consciousness. Their bodies were gradually decomposed, and their bones were replaced with composite materials with a hardness comparable to that of the ring-world alloy. In addition, a layer of dimensional armor was plated on the outside of all the bones to absorb possible impact. The organs in the soldiers' bodies were also replaced by stronger artificial organs, and the blood in the blood vessels was replaced by upgraded molecular robots that can directly transport nutrients, remove waste, and transmit oxygen. Once they suffer any penetrating damage, these robots can also use the energy stored in the soldiers' bodies to create new tissues. The lenses on the soldiers' eyeballs were replaced with composite materials, and each soldier's vision can reach an astonishing 30. The reason why our organs and muscles are not replaced with machinery is for the S-01 power armor that the Spartan warriors are about to equip. Once they enter a critical moment, the rampage mode of the power armor can even directly turn the tables. In addition, the pain perception of these soldiers has been weakened to 1% of that of normal people, and the perception of heat, cold, hunger, thirst, etc. has also been greatly weakened, but because it is an early warning signal, it is not directly cancelled, but the feeling of itching is directly blocked. Chapter 589, Clones. You have completed the transformation of your body. Next, every 10 people form a team, and each team elects its own captain. From today on, each of your lives is no longer your own. Each of you is the most important asset of the Empire. Your military rank will be unified as Major. Your salary will be increased by 2 levels to be equivalent to Colonel, and your relatives or lovers will always be protected by the Imperial government. Congratulations, Spartan warriors, Eva shouted to everyone in the middle of the room. Time flies. 2205 is here in a blink of an eye. The test ship of the Empire's latest model of warship has completed the final test, which means that the new warship can be officially equipped. Except for the dreadnoughts and titans, all the original warships of the Empire have retreated to the second line. They will be gradually replaced by the new battleships, the Zeus-class battleships. The replaced warships will all be responsible for defending various important nodes, and the next battle with the Zerg will be mainly handed over to the Zeus-class battleships. Of course, these warships that have retreated to the second line have also replaced their weapons. The original beam weapons and kinetic weapons have all been replaced with crusher artillery. The replaced weapons were sealed on the spot and will be reactivated after the rules limiting the speed of light disappear. The new Zeus-class battleship is only 2 kilometers long, 200 meters wide, and 300 meters high, which is about the same size as the Empire's original cruiser, and even shortened by 500 meters. This also makes it almost the same speed as the Empire's original cruiser when it is not plated with dimensional armor. According to the Empire's construction capabilities, the Empire can build 400,000 of these new battleships in the next 15 years before the arrival of the Zerg. However, only a few 1,500 of these 400,000 battleships can be plated with dimensional armor. It's not that Mingze doesn't want to equip more battleships with dimensional armor, but the manufacturing cost of dimensional armor is still too high. The dimensional armor used by 100 battleships per year is already the limit. These 1,500 battleships equipped with dimensional armor will be evenly distributed to the Empire's 5 major fleets, and each fleet can share 300 dimensional armored Zeus-class battleships. After the success of the experimental ship, all the shipyards of the Empire began to build Zeus-class battleships non-stop. The new aircraft carrier has also completed the final design. In the final design draft, all the carrier-based aircraft of the new aircraft carrier are suspended in the launch bay in advance. Once a battle breaks out, these fighters can fly out from the launch ports on both sides of the aircraft carrier at the same time. The recovery of the fighters is through the deck in the middle of the aircraft carrier. After the fighters land on the deck, they will be pushed back into the launch bay by drones. The maintenance of these fighters is carried out by molecular robots, without occupying precious space on the ship to build a maintenance room. Once the fighters are all shot, because it is a local battle, the Empire's aircraft carrier can mobilize the Empire's material transmission network at any time to produce fighters continuously. But at this time, the high loss rate of fighters is placed in front of Mingze again. The loss of each fighter means that the Empire has lost a pilot. This is something Mingze absolutely cannot bear. You must know that in the war he deduced, almost every battle will lose millions or even tens of millions of fighters. If so many Imperial pilots die, his heart will bleed, and the Empire will also have a war weariness. Against this background, the cloning plan quietly started. In a galaxy far from civilization in the Empire, A brand new cloning facility is being built under the supervision of EVA. In order to prevent too many deaths of the Empire's soldiers, Mingze decided to replace these Sith soldiers with clones. These clones designed for war are not new humans created by the Empire's human-making facilities. The reason why they are called clones is that these clones are different from new humans. It only takes a month for them to form. As soon as their brains are fully developed, they will be forced to be instilled with memories, and all kinds of air combat skills will be instilled into the clones' brains at the same time. These clones have no fear, no emotions, and they only have loyalty. Therefore, the lifespan of these clones is very short. The super fast growth and forced memory installation seriously affect their lifespan. After each clone comes off the production line, they only have a short lifespan of 3 years, and they will die of genetic collapse after 3 years. At the same time, they don't even have reproductive organs, and they can't reproduce offspring, which isolates the possibility of clones rebelling. Although these clones have a lifespan of 3 years, it is very likely that only a few clones can survive each battle. Therefore, it is almost impossible for them to survive for 3 years. Even if they rebel, the Empire only needs to stop the clone production line, and these clones will collapse after 3 years. In addition to these clones, the Empire's 100 ace fighter pilots will also participate in the battle, but their treatment is obviously better than these clones. These ace pilots control the clones to fight through consciousness devices. Even if the fighter is destroyed, these aces can change their bodies and continue to participate in the battle. At this point, some people may say that Mingze is too cruel and inhumane, and he actually regards clones as cannon fodder tools and consumables. There is no way. Only these efficient clones can give humans some advantages in some aspects. Otherwise, it is too difficult to train a pilot from scratch. Even with the help of the game, once this batch of elites dies in battle, it will take a very long time to train the next batch. This war is about the survival of the Sith people in the entire galaxy. Mingze will never take the lives of hundreds of billions of people in the Sith Empire because of the Virgin Mary. As long as he can win this war, no matter how cruel, inhumane, and insidious the means are, Mingze will do it without hesitation. If these clones are proven to be efficient and reliable, Mingze even plans to replace the Imperial Marines with these clones. After all, the cost of a clone without emotions is much cheaper than raising a soldier. Clones can only live on nutrient solution, but the Imperial soldiers cannot. The Empire even has to prepare various entertainment facilities for them to prevent them from having mental problems. In the Sith Empire Palace, Mingze was standing on the balcony, staring at the Sith Star in the sky not far away. "Your Majesty, do we need to announce the Zerg to the citizens?" Tianyi stood behind Mingze, hugged his waist and asked in a low voice. "No, if we tell them now, they will bear too much pressure. Let's delay it a little longer." Mingze shook his head gently. He had a bad premonition in his heart. Chapter 590, Opening Up Civilian Heavy Weapons. In the year 2210 of the Sith calendar, the fortresses of the Sith Empire around the predicted Zerg landing site have been completely completed. There are dozens of large space fortresses in each star system, and large military bases have also been built on the surface of the planets. All nodes in the important routes from the star field, through the center of the Milky Way, have been armed to the teeth by the Empire's fortresses. 80% of the Empire's fleet has also gathered in the star field outside the Orion Arm. Unfortunately, the capital of the Sith Empire, Ringworld, is very close to this star field, with only more than 1,000 colonies in between. In the year 2211 of the Sith calendar, the Sith Empire government evacuated all colonies within a diameter of 2,000 light-years around the predicted Zerg landing site on the grounds of predicting a huge natural disaster. The residents of these colonies brought their families and all their assets back to the heart of the Milky Way on transport ships. Replacing them in the city was an Imperial Marine Corps, an auxiliary army unit, and an orbital airborne force. Since the Empire sent all the newly incorporated civilizations to sleep in the Tomb space station after ruling the Milky Way, the number of alien soldiers in the Imperial Auxiliary Army has been decreasing. These soldiers did not die in battle, but were assigned to the Orbital Airborne Force because of their improved combat capabilities. Now the entire Sith Empire has 20 billion Imperial Marines, 10 million guards, 10 billion auxiliary forces, and 30 billion orbital airborne forces. Due to the lack of transportation units, most of the soldiers are usually trained and stationed in the garrison, Now, the soldiers stationed in this star region that is about to fight the Zerg account for 80% of the entire Empire's military strength, 10 billion Sith Marines, 10 billion auxiliary forces, and 20 billion orbital airborne forces have been transported to this star region in batches by transport ships for garrison. Various equipment prepared for them are also being transported in an endless stream. Because long-range weapons were weakened, all soldiers' weapons were replaced with electromagnetic rail rifles with a range of only 500 meters, but greatly increased power. Once they were in close combat with the Zerg, their rifles could also fire shotgun shells. Each soldier was also equipped with a 1.6-meter-long knife for use when there was no ammunition. In order to prevent the Zerg from appearing in the ground drilling units, these soldiers began to reinforce each base with the help of construction robots as soon as they arrived at the garrison planet. The underground of each base was surrounded by thick armor plates. In addition, the soldiers also built fortresses, bunkers, and trenches in many places that were easy to defend. Robot troops also became the main force on these planets. Whether it was the Imperial Marines or the Auxiliary Army, each soldier could command 2 combat robots to fight. In order to manufacture so many combat robots, the Sith Empire spent a lot of money. The alien troops that were originally well known to everyone have all been destroyed, not for anything else, but simply because they were worried that the excellent genes of these aliens would be discovered by the Zerg. It would be no fun if those Zerg became stronger. Year 2212 of the Sith calendar. In order to prevent the Zerg from using the resources on the planets with life for supplies, the Empire installed extremely powerful incendiary bombs on each planet with life. Once the planet is completely occupied, these incendiary bombs will turn all the creatures on the entire planet into ashes. The reason why they were not destroyed in advance was that Mingze was afraid that the Zerg would see that this area could not be supplied and would change the route. The reason why nuclear bombs and other weapons were not used was that the Empire still hoped to restart these colonies after the war. After all, the atmospheric environment of these planets would still be preserved. At the same time, the Sith Empire laid countless mines on the planets where fighting might occur. These mines are spread all over the plains and mountains of these planets, and even the oceans have been sprinkled with mines by the Empire. The cities on these planets have also been transformed into meat grinders. Countless automatic weapons and traps have been installed everywhere in the city, and the city buildings have been transformed into fortresses. In the year 2213 of the Sith calendar, Mingze promulgated a new law that all goods produced by all companies must ensure that the inventory reaches 20 times the sales volume of last year before they can be approved for sale. The funds for the production of these goods will be provided by the interest-free loan of the Sith Empire Bank, with a repayment period of 100 years. At the same time, Mingze also announced that all taxes in the Empire will be temporarily cancelled for 10 years. No taxes will be paid for any business activities and any income within 10 years. In addition, all residents must go to the nearest military headquarters for daily military training on Saturdays and Sundays. Strive to make all the people soldiers and all the people militarized. The private companies that received the new law issued by Mingze went crazy, and borrowed loans from the bank one by one. The manufacturers began to produce goods at full capacity, because without taxes, they could lower the selling price of the goods, and there was no doubt that sales would also increase greatly. Isn't it just 20 times the inventory? It doesn't matter. Anyway, there is an interest-free loan from the Empire Bank. They just need to produce as much as possible and double their company's performance during the 10 years of tax exemption. Some people are happy and some are worried. Although the government does not collect taxes, everyone needs to participate in military training on weekends. Every Saturday and Sunday, people can be seen wearing black military uniforms and coming to various bases for training. The material reserves of the Empire's civilians have been greatly improved in the past 2 years, and people's physical fitness has also been steadily improving. Everyone has mastered combat skills. Counting the 1-month military training each year and the acceleration effect of the consciousness infiltration machine, the citizens of the Empire are equivalent to 2 years of military training for each person. Coupled with the accumulation of the previous training, now every citizen of the Empire can be said to be a qualified soldier. In October of the 2214th year of the imperial calendar, the Empire passed the Civilian Heavy Weapons Act. In the bill, it was agreed that civilians could collect and possess heavy weapons such as heavy machine guns, grenade launchers, flamethrowers, etc. Of course, all heavy weapons can only be purchased through official channels, and can only be collected at home and cannot be carried out. These weapons are controlled by the Empire's chips, and once they are taken out of the house without permission, they will be unusable. But correspondingly, the heavy weapons companies of the Imperial royal family almost all sell weapons at cost price. This is good. Almost every household has bought one or more heavy weapons to collect at home. Not only because of its low price, but also because of the improvement of the treatment of the citizens of the Empire. The average living area of every household has reached 500 square meters. Almost every male in the family will build a weapons collection room in his home. After all, this is every man's dream. In addition, it can also prevent accidents such as pirate attacks, so heavy weapons are almost popular in every household. Chapter 591 The Disappearing Zerg Fleet. In the year 2215 of the Sith calendar, the Empire passed a bill requiring civilian ships to be equipped with weapons with a range of less than 100 kilometers. From the day the bill was passed, all civilian ships could be equipped with some electromagnetic railguns with large caliber but short range. Overnight, modifying one's own spaceships became popular among the people. Rich people or companies bought new civilian shipborne weapons from the Imperial military, while those without money could go to the market to buy some old weapons from the period when the Empire just flew out of space. The Empire's war capabilities began to improve invisibly, which also made Mingze determined to fight against the Zerg forces. On January 1, 2219 of the Sith calendar, Mingze announced the convening of the national press conference. All the people in the Sith Empire gathered in front of the major screens, televisions, and personal terminals and waited quietly. No one knew what important news His Majesty the Emperor was going to announce today, but some officials of the Empire who had enough rank had heavy faces. They knew that Mingze was about to announce the Zerg to the citizens. On the big screen, Mingze appeared on the screen wearing a black power armor inlaid with gold patterns. He tapped the microphone in front of him lightly, coughed twice, and then looked up at the camera lens. Dear citizens, this year marks the 199th year since our Sith Empire planted its flag in the starry sky. On this important day of New Year's Day this year, I want to announce to you a major event that will affect your future life. The Empire has concealed this matter from you for decades. Of course, this is a well-intentioned concealment, but today, I have to tell you, because we have no time. As everyone knows, the Empire's capital, Ringworld, was built by a powerful ancient civilization, but now, the fleet that destroyed this powerful ancient civilization is approaching our Milky Way. Based on the information left by the ancient civilization, we named this race the Zerg. The Zerg is brutal and bloodthirsty. They will not capture the defeated, let alone enslave the defeated, because they will devour all of their defeated men and use them as nutrients for their own growth. Once we are defeated, then our entire human race and all of humanity's vassals will be slaughtered, and there is absolutely no chance of survival. According to the information sent back by the monitoring station, the Zerg fleet will arrive in our Milky Way in a year. We only have 1 year to prepare. From today on, the entire Empire will enter the highest level of war preparation. All currencies will no longer be circulated, and the entire Empire will implement a system of rationing survival materials regardless of class. In the Empire, all private enterprises and civilian properties will be unconditionally converted to state-owned today, and will be returned to you one by one according to their value after the war is over. From today on, everyone will take action and get busy. Let us fight for the survival of the Empire and for our descendants to live happily in the starry sky. Those rebels and pirates, I hope you can put aside your prejudice against the Imperial government, report to the Imperial military base nearby, join us, and contribute your strength for the future of everyone. After listening to Mingze's speech, the people in front of the screen became emotional and stood up one after another to express that they would live and die with the Empire. The blood of the Imperial people that had been dormant for decades was aroused. The citizens of the Empire remembered the battles between the Empire and the Clem Empire, the Corruptors, the Pilgrims and other civilizations decades ago. The Empire always defeated the majority with the minority and the strong with the weak, so the citizens of the Empire were still full of confidence in the future of the Empire. Citizens have put their full energy into their work, even if their work can only be exchanged for the most basic survival supplies, they have no regrets. With the end of the press conference, private companies have been approached by imperial officials. During the next war, all resources in the Empire will be used in the war, and any waste is not allowed. The debts owed by various companies to the Imperial Bank have also been automatically forgiven, which is equivalent to using the money of the Imperial Bank to develop themselves in vain. The funds of the Imperial Bank come from the deposits of the people in the Empire. Once a battle with the Zerg occurs, there will definitely be a large number of Imperial citizens sacrificed. The deposits of these dead Imperial citizens will be automatically confiscated. In this way, when the war is over, this funding gap will naturally be filled. Entertainment activities in the Empire were also suspended from the beginning of the day, leaving only some combat-oriented games to continue to exist. All variety shows, movies and TV series that are being filmed have been stopped. At the same time, all Imperial citizens will receive living supplies according to their respective levels. For example, citizens of the first level can receive survival supplies for 2 people, while citizens of the second level can receive survival supplies for 3 people, and citizens of the 4th level can receive survival supplies for 5 people. All unemployed citizens of the Empire began to spontaneously go to various military bases for training. After all, mastering as much combat knowledge as possible would be very helpful for their own survival. People also took out the weapons they usually treasured from their collection rooms and placed them in easy reach. Some people began to buy armor plates to seal their windows in preparation for possible future battles. But Mingze did not tell them that once a planet was invaded by the Zerg army, it would be difficult for these people to survive. All they could do was to slightly reduce the strength of the Zerg army. On the 5th day, the Imperial government distributed a capsule to the citizens. After being swallowed by the citizens, this capsule would release molecular robots. Once the citizens died, these robots would decompose the bodies into energy and dissipate before the Zerg swallowed the bodies. In this way, even if the citizens of the Empire died in battle, their bodies would not become nutrients for the development of the Zerg. The entire Sith Empire was like a clockwork, and began to rush forward. Time flies, and in the blink of an eye, a year has passed. The Zerg fleet has reached the outer reaches of the Milky Way. Just when all the staff of the Empire's Cape of Good Hope Deep Space Monitoring Station were evacuated and prepared to welcome the landing attack of the Zerg fleet, the Zerg fleet suddenly disappeared from the Empire's radar. Suddenly, the Empire's command center was in chaos, and all the observation stations in the outer reaches of the Milky Way were running at full power, constantly scanning the surrounding starry sky. How is it? Have you found the whereabouts of the Zerg fleet? In the Empire's command center, Mingze anxiously asked the officers in the room. Your Majesty, we have turned on all external detection devices, but no matter whether it is gravitational wave detection, energy field or optical detection, the Zerg fleet has not been found. Their stealth ability is too strong. We can't effectively find them at all. An officer shook his head and replied to Mingze. Chapter 592, Space Station Under Attack. Damn it, we were fooled. They deliberately exposed their whereabouts during the voyage, just to make us think they were going to land in this star field, so that we would waste the precious resources of the Empire on building fortress defense lines in this area, and they also succeeded in dragging 80% of our fleets in this star field. Mingze angrily slammed the door frame. Immediately order the troops to go to the central star field of the Milky Way to wait for orders and be ready to attack at any time. The colonies outside the Milky Way will immediately enter the highest alert, and at the same time, begin to arrange for the people to evacuate. Mingze sighed and arranged for the officers. Yes, sir. Many officers began to mobilize the Empire's fleet from the original defense area to gather in the middle of the Milky Way. In this way, no matter where the Zerg fleet landed in the Milky Way, the Empire's main fleet could reach the destination as quickly as possible. However, after the Empire's fleet went to the center of the Milky Way for several days, it still did not monitor the whereabouts of the Zerg fleet. Gradually, the tense nerves of the Empire's soldiers slowly relaxed. A month later, in a deep space detection station outside the Milky Way, several soldiers were chatting with coffee in hand. They had set the radar to automatically alarm, and since there had been no enemy for so long, these soldiers were no longer as cautious as they were at the beginning. Alarm. Alarm. An abnormal gravitational source is detected approaching. Alarm. An abnormal gravitational source is detected approaching. Suddenly, an alarm sounded in the space station, and the lights in the corridor turned light red. The soldiers who were chatting hurriedly turned around and ran to their respective workbenches. At this time, they could see dozens of huge pustules more than 20 meters in size rushing towards their space station through optical detectors. The self-defense mechanism of the space station was automatically opened, and a series of close-in defense guns rose from under the deck and aimed at the pustule that was rapidly shooting. One after another, The shells were mixed with fluorescent bullets and fired at the pustules, forming a series of gorgeous bullet marks in the air. After a few seconds, these pustules plunged into the rain of bullets in the space station, and silent explosions continued to occur in the pustules. These pustules seemed to have no defense ability at all. They would be easily broken by a shell, and the broken green body fluids filled the starry sky. In just 3 seconds, all the pustules that shot towards the space station had been destroyed, leaving only the green liquid floating towards the space station due to inertia. Activate the anti-corrosion function of the shield, and prepare the neutralizing bomb. The soldiers operated on the console in an orderly manner. In order to prevent the possible acid attack of the Zerg, the Empire specially upgraded all shields to shields with stronger corrosion resistance, and the neutralizing bomb can neutralize the acid and reduce its corrosiveness. But to the surprise of the soldiers, these floating green liquids seemed to be the body fluids of these creatures, and they were not corrosive or aggressive at all. These liquids fell on the shield of the space station and gradually wrapped the space station into a sphere. No. We have lost communication with the outside world. A soldier suddenly changed his face and said to the others in panic. The scanning device is scanning those liquids. Another soldier controlled the scanner to continuously scan the green liquids attached to the outer shield of the space station. At this moment, the outer shield of the space station suddenly shattered and dissipated, and there was no sign of the shield breaking. After the shield was broken, the green liquids rushed towards the space station as if they had consciousness. In just over 10 seconds, the entire space station was wrapped in layers of green liquid. The system shows that these liquids are trying to penetrate into the space station, but I have just sealed all the external exits of the space station, and these liquids can't get in. A soldier wiped the cold sweat from his forehead and breathed a sigh of relief. We just have to wait for rescue. Once the headquarters can receive the signal we send every half an hour, they will definitely know that we are in trouble. Another soldier stood up from his chair and paced back and forth in the room. At this moment, everyone suddenly felt a violent vibration coming from the space station. Everyone hurriedly turned their heads to look at the display screen, only to see that the position of the original space station escape capsule had turned red. Damn it! Someone escaped in the escape pod. Everyone was shocked. You know, once someone can't bear the pressure and leaves in the escape pod will be exposed to these liquids. The escape pod was originally designed to be used when the space station is about to be destroyed, and its internal defense measures are almost non-existent. Sure enough, the liquid seemed to have found an outlet and rushed towards the escape pod frantically. Everyone in the control room hurriedly turned on the cameras around the escape pod. I saw that these green liquids condensed into a spike, constantly hitting the glass door that separated the escape pod from the outside world. A few cracks began to appear under the impact of the green liquid. This door can't hold on for too long. Seal all isolation doors in the space station, close all ventilation facilities, and activate the indoor defense facilities around the escape pod. The commander of the space station finally spoke, and the soldiers hurriedly lowered the isolation doors around the escape pod. A few seconds later, the glass door of the escape room finally couldn't withstand the impact of the liquid and suddenly shattered. Countless fragments were sucked into space along with the air in the room. The green liquid began to flow into the corridor of the space station along the breach, but fortunately, the surrounding isolation doors had been lowered, and the liquid was trapped in the corridor again. However, everyone knew that this corridor could not block these liquids at all, and the defense capabilities of the room were definitely far inferior to the defense capabilities outside the space station. They had to find a way to leave here. Under the command of the commander, many soldiers began to frantically delete the information saved on the mainframe of the space station. If these information were obtained by the Zerg, it would be unimaginable. At this time, the indoor defense facilities in the corridor also began to work, and beams of light swept towards the green liquid frantically. The parts of these liquids that were swept quickly evaporated into gas and dissipated in the air, but the amount of green liquid was too much, and several indoor beam guns could not eliminate so much liquid. Soon these liquids surged to the bottom of the beam gun, and continued to pile up and extend upward until the beam gun was completely swallowed. After flashing a few times, the beam gun started to work again, but this time they no longer attacked the green liquid. Instead, they began to fire wildly at the isolation door that blocked the liquid. Chapter 593, The Fall of the Deep Space Exploration Station. In just a few dozen seconds, the isolation door at the end of the corridor began to dissolve into a hole under the crazy shooting of the beam gun. The green liquid flowed along the small hole to the nearby room, and the electronic equipment they passed by was filled with green liquid, and the space station gradually lost control of these devices. The soldiers in the space station saw the scene and a chill rose from their feet. We must escape and report the attack methods of these liquids back to the Empire, otherwise our fleet will be in danger. A soldier's eyes suddenly became firm. What should we do? The other soldiers looked at this soldier. The scan just now showed that these liquids are composed of green cells. These cells have strong adaptability and autonomy. They rely on a fat-like structure in their bodies to store energy for their actions, and they have a tiny digestive system inside, which means that they rely on eating to replenish energy like normal organisms. The only people who can be used as food for them are those of us here. And if there is no food in the escape pod we send out, these creatures will sooner or later run out of energy, and they will not be able to control anything. The soldier analyzed, touching his chin. We need one person to leave in the escape capsule and destroy the control system of the escape capsule in the escape capsule so that these creatures cannot control the operation of the escape capsule. At the same time, this person must commit suicide and let the molecular robot decompose it into energy. In this way, these creatures cannot replenish their own energy by eating. The soldier showed a resolute look. But how do we store this information? What if they can invade the storage device? Asked another soldier. Use this. The soldier who made the suggestion took out a CD from his pocket. This is an optical storage device that does not contain any electronic parts. We will choose someone to take it away from here and leave directly through the escape capsule in the control room. After the soldier finished speaking, he inserted the storage device into the terminal and began to store information about these liquid creatures. Since you proposed it, this task is up to you. The soldiers knew that whether they left or not, they would end up dead. The soldier nodded, inserted the CD into his pocket, and got into the escape capsule in the control room. System, discard all nutrient solution. After getting into the escape capsule, the soldier ordered loudly, and 5 white nutrient solutions were ejected from the escape capsule. Long live the Empire! The soldier saluted the others through the glass cover of the escape capsule, then turned around, sat down, and pulled the ejection lever. The escape capsule accelerated towards the starry sky. At the same time, a small part of the liquid creatures covering the outside of the space station also attached to the escape capsule and flew away. The remaining liquid creatures gathered together and began to hit the glass door of the escape capsule in the control room. Cracks spread on the door at a speed visible to the naked eye. The soldiers in the control room raised their pistols to their heads and pulled the trigger. At this time, the liquid creatures that left with the escape capsule had begun to destroy the thin armor of the escape capsule. Heavy collisions came from outside the escape capsule. The soldier in the escape capsule first set the hyperspace device to start the emergency jump in 1 minute, then took out his gun and shot all the electronic equipment to pieces. After putting the storage disk into an item box in the escape capsule, the soldier put the pistol in his mouth and pulled the trigger. After a bang, the soldier's head turned into an exploded watermelon. At the same time, the molecular robot in his body detected the death of the host and began to decompose the soldier's body. In the blink of an eye, the soldier's body began to burn and emit light and heat and then dissipated into the air. The molecular robot, which absorbed most of the energy, destroyed all its processors and turned into a large metal sphere that continued to emit light and heat. At this time, the liquid creature finally broke through the thin armor of the escape pod and entered the escape pod. But the moment it came in, the hyperspace device had already started the emergency jump. The escape pod just disappeared into the universe. After the escape pod entered the hyperspace through the emergency jump, no matter how the liquid creature controlled the spacecraft did not respond at all. Since there was no food to supplement, this group of liquid creatures could only curl up and wait for death. The soldiers bet right. These creatures were designed for short-term use at the beginning, and their energy storage tissues could only supply them for 10 days. If they did not receive energy supply from the Zerg warships within 10 days, and did not devour any creatures to replenish energy, then these creatures would die directly. At this time, the Empire's headquarters had received the message that the Deep Space Monitoring Station had lost contact. Mingze and others knew that the long-awaited Zerg fleet had finally landed. Tens of minutes later, the Empire's main fleet guard in the center of the Milky Way mobilized half of the fleet to fly towards the lost Deep Space Detection Station. The reason for this arrangement is that if this space station is just a feint of the Zerg, then the Empire at least has the other half of the main fleet to be arranged to the real landing side of the Zerg. And sending so many fleets is also to prevent these fleets from being easily destroyed if it is really the landing site of the Zerg. They must persist until the support of the Imperial fleet. Just after this Imperial fleet set off, at the other end of the Milky Way, Fuxi Star is a habitable planet colonized by the Empire in the late period. The ecology of this planet is very close to the ecological environment on the Sith Star, so it has attracted a large number of colonists. However, due to the scarcity of rare minerals, this planet is currently only used as an agricultural colony for growing various grains, fruits, and spices. More than 20 million interstellar farmers are scattered on this beautiful green planet. The only capital of the entire planet is Fuxi City, located at the planet's equator. The entire city consists of tens of thousands of skyscrapers. It is a trading center for farmers to trade various products and purchase daily necessities. Since these farmers are big landlords, almost everyone has bought several floors of skyscrapers as their residence in the city. However, the tranquility of this planet was broken a few months ago. Due to the disappearance of the Zerg fleet, the entire outer colonies of the galaxy were abandoned. And these colonists were required to return to the planet near the center of the galaxy immediately. But most people are unwilling to go back. This is their home, and this is all their property. They are lucky, thinking that the Zerg should not land on their side so coincidentally, so 60% of the people choose to stay on this planet and are unwilling to evacuate with the Imperial Army. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 594 Zerg Invasion. As the curtains slowly opened to both sides, the morning sun shone through the huge French windows onto Eunice's face. Rubbing her hazy eyes, Eunice stood up and walked to the window. Outside the window, Fuxi City was still asleep. Only patrolling police drones occasionally flew between the skyscrapers. The high degree of mechanization meant that people did not need to work in person, so these landlords rarely got up as early as Eunice. Eunice was different from these colonists. She was originally an explorer. After successfully discovering 2 high-value planets, she had become quite wealthy. After all the planets were explored, Eunice chose to settle on the last planet she discovered and become an interstellar farmer. Good morning, Master. Your breakfast is ready. At this time, an artificial maid came from behind her and whispered. It's a bit boring to be so leisurely every day. The monotonous life every day is boring. I still miss the days in the adventure group. Eunice did not reply, but looked at the city shrouded in a faint mist outside the window. Suddenly, a piercing air defense alarm sounded over the city. The whole city seemed to come alive suddenly. Eunice could see the curtains on the tall buildings opposite being pulled open one after another. What happened? Was it a Zerg attack? Eunice frowned and walked quickly to her cloakroom while asking the maid. Just now, the orbital space station on Fuxi Star detected a large number of unknown gravity sources approaching. It is very likely that it is the Zerg fleet. The maid quickly followed Eunice and explained. It is not very likely, it is those Zerg. Eunice saw with sharp eyes that in the sky not far away, a huge creature several kilometers long was passing through the clouds and rushing towards the ground. Because the Empire has added these Zergs to the game fantasy, most of the people already know what the Zerg look like. Eunice recognized at a glance that this was a low-level orbital transport ship of the Zerg. This kind of ship has only one function, which is to send Zerg troops to the surface of the planet. Because the Zerg need a large number of organisms as food, the Zerg can only use troops to directly invade the surface. If they use large-scale bombing, it will undoubtedly waste a lot of food. Therefore, this kind of low-level orbital transport ship is often the first unit that appears when the Zerg attack a planet. This is emphasized in the records of ancient civilizations. Eunice didn't dare to dawdle any longer. If she couldn't get to the shelter within 10 minutes, the shelter would not leave a door for her. After putting on a civilian power armor quickly, Eunice ran to her weapons collection room to take out a few guns and ran towards the elevator. Just as she was running in the corridor, she saw through the French windows of the corridor that the armor of the low-level orbital transport ship began to lift outward. When the armor of this orbital transport ship was fully opened, the honeycomb structure inside was revealed, and oval landing capsules were fired from the honeycomb structure into the city. Along with the sound of air defense alarms, the anti-aircraft guns on the top floors of the city buildings began to roar, and shells mixed with light bullets rushed towards the flying landing capsules. Before these shells hit the landing capsules, they suddenly shattered, and tiny flying insects swarmed from the landing capsules to the anti-aircraft guns on the roof. After these flying insects hit the anti-aircraft guns would be directly dissolved by their blood, and soon, the air defense facilities of the entire city would all fall. At this time, the real landing capsules were shot out from the transport ship, and egg-shaped landing capsules covered the sky. When Eunice ran to the elevator entrance, these landing capsules had already arrived near her home. These egg-shaped landing capsules just smashed against the outer wall of the building. However, they did not break or slide off, but just stuck to the outer wall of the high-rise building. Standing in the elevator through the glass, Eunice could see hideous insects drilling into the building through the holes melted by the landing capsules. After a while, Eunice heard screams from the building. Those who did not have time to escape must have died tragically in the mouths of the insects. Seeing that the elevator was getting lower and lower, Eunice couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. As long as they could escape into the underground shelter, they might be able to hold on until the arrival of the Imperial fleet. At this moment, Eunice suddenly felt the elevator shake violently. When she looked up, she found two bugs standing on the top of her elevator. The two bugs were cutting the top cover of the elevator with their hard mouth parts. Eunice was not one of those women who only knew how to scream. She decisively pulled out two shotguns from her back. Actually, they could be called shotguns, nothing wrong with that, and aimed at the two bugs lying on the elevator and pulled the trigger. With two gunshots, the top cover of the elevator was blown to pieces, but the two bugs were only slightly injured and fell from the top cover into the elevator. Hiss! The two bugs surrounded Eunice on the left and right, and their mouth parts kept closing and making a clicking sound. Just when Eunice was desperate, the maid beside her suddenly accelerated, holding a bug and dragging another bug, breaking the glass shell of the elevator and jumping into the elevator shaft. Eunice's outstretched hand froze in the air. This artificial maid had been with her for several years, and she had developed feelings for it. She didn't expect that her master protecting mechanism would be triggered at the last moment. More and more orbital transport ships passed through the clouds in the sky not far away, and Eunice showed a desperate look. At this time, she regretted very much in her heart, why didn't she follow the Imperial Army to evacuate here? There were countless people who had the same idea as her. Whether they had successfully hidden in the shelter or those who hide at home, they all regretted their original decision. But it was too late to regret. The Imperial ground forces and fleets had retreated to the core area to strengthen defense. There were no more garrisons on their outermost planet in the galaxy. There was no Imperial fleet in orbit either. This place had been completely abandoned. As for those who were unwilling to evacuate, the Empire had automatically regarded them as giving up their right to survive. Eunice had tried to connect to the Empire's interstellar network through the terminal in her hand, but she couldn't connect to the network at all. The entire planet was isolated from the outside world. Eunice knew what this meant. It meant that the Empire would not send a rescue fleet without confirming the specific situation of this planet, because there might be no survivors here. Therefore, she had to escape and transmit the information here back to the Empire so that the Empire's fleet could come to rescue the survivors here. Chapter 595, Escape from Life and Death. Swarms of insects were moving through the originally prosperous city. These Zergunets, called mantises by ancient civilizations, had 6 well-developed limbs and a pair of sharp mouth parts. Their strong gripping ability allowed them to fight in all kinds of terrains, and their super strong biting ability allowed them to easily tear open the shell of the hovercraft. And their 2 pairs of large pincers could even crush a person directly. The entire city was left with only gunpowder smoke and occasional gunfire and screams under the rampage of these lowest-level Zerg units. Thanks to the Empire's opening of civilian weapons rights, the people had little resistance. Eunice leaned against the only remaining wall of the elevator and gasped for breath. The palpitations she had just brought to her had not yet subsided. At this moment, a hover truck welded with metal plates flew from the outside of the building. There were 5 heavy machine guns and a rapid-fire cannon on the truck, which looked like a wasteland style. "Little girl, come up quickly. Don't go to the underground shelter, half of the shelter has been breached. If you hide in there, you will definitely die." A metal door opened on the side of the floating truck, and 2 fully armed men inside the metal door reached out to her. Eunice gritted her teeth, took out a shotgun, and fired at the glass outside the elevator. After the glass cracked, She kicked hard with her left leg and rushed towards the broken glass. Eunice's body smashed the elevator glass and then smashed the glass on the building's exterior wall and came into the air. The floating truck dropped down sharply and then turned sideways, aiming the door in the direction where Eunice fell. With a bang, Eunice fell into the interior of the floating truck. "Welcome to join our self-rescue team." A man came up and shook Eunice's hand. At this time, Eunice saw that there were more than a dozen men and women of varying ages sitting in the truck. These people were all fully armed and holding pistols or rifles. It was obvious that those who were able to escape to this car during the Zerg attack were not old, weak, or disabled. This Mr. Wang, he has an armed yacht parked in the city's port. If we can escape to the yacht, we can escape into hyperspace. The man who looked like the captain pointed to a middle-aged man in a suit sitting behind him. That's good, Eunice nodded and sat down on a chair beside her with a sigh of relief. Suddenly, the hover truck shook violently, and everyone in the car grabbed the armrests of the seats. "What happened?" Eunice shouted to the driver's seat. "Nothing, we were just hit by a bone spur shell, but fortunately I installed the bridge armor that was taken from the abandoned battleship of the Empire on this car." The driver of the truck threw a smug look at the rear cabin. The armed truck shuttled quickly between the high-rise buildings. Occasionally, one or two mantises jumped off the buildings, but these insects were shot to pieces by the two machine guns on the top of the truck in the air. The only thing that interfered with the truck's flight was the bone spur shells that were shot from underground from time to time. These Zerg units with several long tubes inserted in their bodies could easily shoot out the bone spur shells filled with acid at more than 10 times the speed of sound. The people on the armed trucks did not know that the acid would adhere to the body of the truck after the shells were broken. Unknowingly, the armor on the bottom of the truck was almost corroded. At this time, another bone spur shell was fired at the truck. Although the truck was already trying its best to deflect, it still could not avoid this bone spur shell fired from a very short distance. The 1.5-meter-long spike directly penetrated the corroded armor and pierced into the interior of the truck. A man who was taking a short break in the truck was pierced from bottom to top by the spike. That's not all. After completing the piercing attack, the bone spur actually exploded by itself, and the acid in the shell flew everywhere. The people sitting next to Eunice unfortunately blocked all the acid for Eunice. The people covered by the acid were horrified to find that their power armor was gradually melted by the acid. Soon, these people were melted into a pool of liquid with screams, and the pool of liquid also made a sizzling sound on the floor. Several people who were lucky enough not to be corroded by the acid screamed in horror. Most of their companions who were still alive just now died in an instant, and their deaths were so tragic. "Quick! Let's fly high. It's too dangerous to fly low," Eunice shouted loudly in the direction of the cab. But after a few seconds, no one responded to her, and the hovercraft was still flying as usual. Eunice hurried to the cab, but saw that the driver's body had tilted to the side. She was horrified to find that the driver's head had been corroded long ago. It seemed that the acid had accidentally splashed on the poor man's head. Suddenly, the building in front of the flying car attracted Eunice's attention. Because the driver was dead, the flying car lost control and kept crashing into the opposite building. Seeing that the collision was imminent, Eunice hurriedly dragged the driver's body aside and sat in the driver's seat herself. "Sorry, your vital signs are not on the database of this vehicle, and we cannot grant you control authority." When Eunice put her hands on the steering wheel, she suddenly heard a cold rejection. "Damn it!" Eunice slammed the steering wheel hard, stood up and ran back. "Everyone fasten your seat belts and prepare for the impact," she shouted to the survivors in the car and grabbed the armrests of the seat tightly. As soon as she grabbed the armrest, the hovercraft plunged into a skyscraper. The armored truck relied on its hard armor and huge weight to rush through the building, knocking down walls one by one, and nothing could block its way. A few seconds later, the other side of the building suddenly shattered, and a hover truck rushed out of it and continued to crash into the second building. At this time, the propellers of the hovercraft had been severely damaged in the previous collision. After the car crashed into a building again, the two thrusters finally couldn't hold on and stopped working after spewing out black smoke. Due to the lack of forward thrust, the speed of the armored truck finally slowed down after it crashed through another building and crashed into the third building. When the hover truck stopped, the main structure of the car had been severely deformed. Although it was equipped with a layer of armor from the bridge of a scrapped Imperial battleship, its main body was still made of the original truck material. After enduring so many collisions, The main structure of the truck could no longer hold on. After a few sounds of metal twisting, the truck completely fell apart, and machine guns and turrets were scattered all over the ground. Eunice's vision gradually blurred, and she felt that the world was leaving her. Chapter 596 Spartan Warrior. Hey, are you okay? Eunice suddenly felt someone patting her cheek gently. She tried to open her eyes a little and vaguely saw a man with a white skull sprayed on his helmet. Where am I? Eunice rubbed her dizzy head and barely sat up with the help of this man. I just rescued you from the wreckage of the hovercraft. You are lucky. You are the only one who survived the entire truck. The man in black power armor let go of his hand. When the man moved away, Eunice saw that there were several soldiers wearing the same clothes as the man standing in the room that was smashed by the truck. Are you reinforcements from the Empire? Eunice wanted to stand up excitedly, but she stumbled and fell to the ground again. We are not the Empire's reinforcements. Now the outer sides of the four arms of the entire galaxy are under attack. The Empire's fleets have dispersed and are rushing to various attack locations. Your planet is just one of the 136 colonies attacked. The Empire's military has no time to take care of so many colonies. Now our main fleet is heading to strategic points worth retaking. Your agricultural planet has been abandoned. The purpose of our coming here is to find out the Zerg's attack methods and weaknesses. The Zerg attack on your planet is the lightest, but the Zerg units deployed are the most complete, so we must find out the details of the Zerg on this planet. The man shook his head gently and apologized. I understand. It's all our fault that we didn't listen to the advice and follow the troops to evacuate. Eunice sighed. How could she blame the Empire for not coming to save them when she was asking for trouble? Can I join you? Since the possibility of my escape is very low, I might as well kill some bugs with you. Eunice grabbed the stick with her hand and propped herself up. This is for you. If you inject it, you can maintain your physical peak for a week. After a week, you will be on the verge of death. If you don't get treatment by then, you will die. It's up to you whether you are willing to be injected or not, the man said, throwing a syringe with a flashing green light. After Eunice took the syringe, she didn't hesitate and directly opened the power armor shell on her thigh and stabbed it into her white skin. After the green liquid was injected into her body began to wriggle. The bones that were originally removed were connected together under the pressure of muscles, and the broken wounds were instantly healed. This potion is more powerful than the nanorbits used for treatment. I feel better now than usual. Eunice jumped up from the ground with one hand, looking like she had never been injured. Which unit of the Empire are you from? Eunice came to the team with a rifle handed to her by the man. We are the Spartan team of the secret army of the Empire. I am the captain, Miss Lee, and this is our deputy captain Stova, the man said and patted the shoulder of his companion beside him. The man opened the visor of his helmet, revealing a delicate and beautiful face. Stova rolled her eyes and closed the visor again. She was not originally a member of the Spartan force, but because she was an elite adventurer and had been on this planet for more than a year, she was specially recruited into the team to serve as a guide. Follow us closely. Your power armor is only the top civilian version, which is very different from our power armor. We need to find a place to help you upgrade your power armor. Lee Missy waved her hand and jumped down from the broken window of the building. Stova hurried over and found that Lee Missy was just holding on to the gap in the wall and sliding down along the slope of the building. Without hesitation, she also jumped down, which made Lee Missy, also known as Lee Mingze, below couldn't help but give a thumbs up. He didn't expect that this girl would have such courage. She looked like a spoiled little princess. After confirming that there were no enemies, the rest of the team members also jumped down, and the 11 people fell to the bottom of the tall building. At this time, everyone could clearly see the swarm of insects on the ground staring at them. These insects occupied the entire block in a black mass. Among the ordinary mantis infantry, there were also several poisonous scorpions that could spray bone spur shells. Share data. Fire at full speed, Lee Mingze shouted, pointed his rifle at the swarm of insects below and pulled the trigger. His gunshots ignited the tranquility of the swarm of insects. One by one, the poisonous scorpions sprayed bone spur shells at the high-rise buildings, while the mantises inserted their claws into the glass curtain wall of the building and tried to climb up. The team also began to fire fiercely at the swarm of insects under their feet, and bullets hit the head of each insect accurately. The poisonous scorpions were the focus of attention. Because of data sharing, everyone's attack targets did not repeat, and everyone was a sharpshooter, and every shot hit the head, killing and abusing them with extremely high efficiency. At the same time, The bone spur shells also flew in front of them, and the spikes fiercely penetrated the glass curtain wall and penetrated it. The Spartan warriors used their left hands to flexibly control the direction on the glass curtain wall, allowing themselves to dodge the spikes. Unissa was different. Without professional training and not so agile, she could only use all four limbs to change direction on the glass. Even so, she was almost pierced by bone spurs several times, and the most recent bone spur caused sparks to rub off her helmet. As more and more Zergs were killed by the crowd, the streets gradually became empty, but there were more bugs coming not far away. Seeing that they were about to land, Mingze hurriedly ordered everyone to fire sub-grenades at the bottom. One grenade after another flew out of the soldiers' guns and exploded in the air, shooting small sub-grenades all around. Countless explosions broke out on the streets, the remains of the bugs flew everywhere, and the dark green blood splashed around like water falling into stones. Although these sub-grenades made of special explosives are not large in size, their killing ability and killing radius are comparable to the most powerful fortress cannons in the Earth period. The violent explosion shattered all the glass in several nearby blocks. The hovercrafts parked on the street and the wreckage of some hovercrafts were blown into powder. Because it was a newly built colony, the roads in the city were still made of the most primitive materials. After this explosion, countless large pits were directly blown out. At this time, Mingze and others fell into the lobby of the building because the glass under them was shattered. Save! Save! Several Spartan warriors rolled their bodies and pointed their rifles around to confirm safety and shouted. Chapter 597, New Zerg Tank Beast. Mingze walked quickly to the center of the hall and projected a hologram into the air. This planet has been used as the main area for the Zerg to test tactics. All of their low-level units are deployed on this planet. On other planets in the Empire, the Zerg have only deployed mantises and scorpions. Therefore, if we want to gain the upper hands in the subsequent battles, we must understand the combat capabilities of all their units. There is a Zerg medium-sized orbital transport ship 100 kilometers away from us. At least 5 types of Zerg are gathered around it. This is our target. To reach the target, we need to pass through another 30 kilometers of cities and 70 kilometers of wilderness. We still have buildings to cover us in the city, but we will be completely unprotected in the wilderness. Mingze pointed to the flashing red arrow on the map and said, Spartan warriors are fearless. Several soldiers patted their breastplates vigorously. Since you know that this is the Zerg's testing ground, why don't you send a large force here? Unissa asked the question that she had been holding in her heart. Every planet that the Zerg attacks has its space units lying in ambush. We don't know where they are right now. Once we send out a transport fleet, it is very likely that they will surround and attack us. Plus, the troops still have to defend the central area that occupies 90% of the Empire's population, so the Empire can only send us here to get intelligence. Mingze sighed. These damn Zerg fleets have not yet revealed their whereabouts, but only revealed the whereabouts of the transport ships at various attack points. Their fleets may be hiding anywhere, secretly watching, waiting for the Empire's fleet to reveal its flaws, so Mingze must not give them a chance. The Empire's main fleet did not actually disperse, but continued to maintain a 4-branch state, 2 defending in the center of the galaxy, and the other 2 heading to the colonies that were recently attacked. Okay, let's go. Unissa shrugged to show her understanding. Wait, let's go to the basement of this building first. There is a safe house of the Empire's intelligence department. There are several sets of top military armor for agents in the safe house. Mingze suddenly called Unissa and sent her a new coordinate. Why are there safe houses of intelligence departments on such a remote planet? Unissa's eyes widened in disbelief. This is a necessary means for the Empire to maintain its rule. Some organizations that secretly split the Empire may grow in any empire, so we can't let go of any place where there are people gathered, Mingze said helplessly. As the Empire ruled the Milky Way, a large number of weapons and equipment that did not belong to the Empire system flowed into the market. These equipment were beyond the control of Tianyi, so now the resources needed to maintain stability are far more than before. In Mingze's words, even a planet with only 2 residents must have an agent of the Empire, so the Shadow Department spread agents everywhere, and there were a large number of safe houses in each colony. Mingze and others held guns and carefully walked through the lobby of the building, rushing towards another tall building across the street. At this time, Unissa hated why the distance between buildings in the city was so long, and there was a street of nearly 1,000 meters between the 2 skyscrapers. Since the Spartan warrior's power armor and physical fitness were much stronger than Eunice's, when Eunice had only run 1/3 of the way, the Spartan warriors had already run into the lobby of the opposite building. The other warriors formed a circle around the door and carefully guarded against the Zerg that might rush out of the building, while Li Mingze and Stao pointed their guns at Eunice's sides. "Run faster. If you are exposed on the street for too long, you will be discovered by the Zerg's orbital units," Li Mingze shouted loudly in the communication. "I want to run faster, but the maximum speed of this power armor is so fast. What can I do?" Eunice rolled her eyes and returned, and the speed of her legs remained unchanged. At this time, the ground suddenly shook violently, and at the same time, there was a sound of banging on the ground not far away. Everyone hurriedly cast their eyes and found that on the road not far from Eunice, a gray beast with 3 15-meter-high diamond-shaped bone shields on the front and a height of 12 meters was running wildly. Every time its heavy body stepped on the ground would vibrate. The 20-meter-long body of this guy rushed towards Eunice like a heavy truck. "No!" Li Mingze and Stao hurriedly pulled the trigger at the beast. However, the bullets fired from the rifle did not react after hitting the monster's body. All the bullets were blocked by the layers of diamond-shaped armor attached to its body. You must know that the weapons equipped by the Spartan team are not the conventional weapons equipped by ordinary soldiers. Even so, they cannot penetrate the shell of this monster. "Stop when I count to 3, Li Mingze suddenly shouted in the communicator. "Understood." Eunice kept her speed and continued to rush forward. 1, 2, 3. When Li Mingze counted to 3, Eunice suddenly stopped and rubbed the ground with her feet while leaning back to stop. At this time, the monster rushed past her less than 10 centimeters away. Originally, it had calculated that it would hit Eunice, but it had never thought that the other party would actually slow down before the collision. Because the distance was too close, the monster could no longer adjust its direction. Eunice took the opportunity to quickly speed up and run towards the opposite building. A few seconds later, Eunice successfully rushed into the hall and continued to run into the room. Li Mingze and others also hurriedly turned around to catch up. Behind them, the monster was angrily accelerating towards everyone. System: name this Zerg unit tank beast. The attack ability is unknown, but the defense ability is strong. Li Mingze recorded the information in the database through voice while running. At this time, they had already run into the interior of the skyscraper. Just when they thought they had escaped, there was a rumbling sound of collapse behind them. The tank beast was smashing the indoor structure of the building and rushing towards everyone. "Captain, apply for the use of antimatter bullets," a soldier shouted to Li Mingze. "Don't waste special ammunition on such slow-reacting creatures. We don't know what we will encounter later. Leave this monster to me, you keep moving forward." "This is an order," Li Mingze shouted to everyone and drew the long sword on his back. Several soldiers nodded without saying anything more and walked forward with Eunice. "You just let your captain cover the rear? At least tell us to leave it to us." Eunice looked at several Spartan warriors in disbelief. Chapter 598 Arrival at Destination. "It is the duty of a soldier to obey orders," the Spartan warriors replied expressionlessly. They had suppressed their emotions and would not have any idea of sacrifice. After Eunice and others ran away, Li Mingze rushed towards Tank with a giant sword. Anyway, he could change his body at any time, and death was never a problem for him. At this time, this tank also rushed in front of Li Mingze. If the 3 huge bone shields hit Li Mingze, he would undoubtedly be knocked out. But Li Mingze did not retreat. Instead, he inserted the long sword diagonally into the floor and then lifted it up. A large piece of floor tile was dug out from the ground, revealing a groove that could accommodate one person. Li Mingze slid into the groove with a shovel, and the huge bone shield passed over the tip of his nose. At this time, he turned on the energy beam blade of the long sword and directly inserted the long sword into the soft belly of Tank above his body. A cutting sound came from the top of Li Mingze's head. The long sword cut a long cut in the abdomen of Tank with the help of the speed of Tank. A large amount of green blood gushed out from the wound, but this Zerg tank did not lose its combat effectiveness. Its powerful self-healing ability began to quickly heal the wound. Li Mingze could see with his naked eyes that buds of flesh were emerging from both sides of the wound. He quickly pulled out his pistol and switched to high explosive mode, frantically firing a magazine at the tank's wound that had not yet healed. These high explosive bombs were instantly detonated after being shot into the tank's body. The entire tank was like a balloon that was blown up, and the bone armor on its body was deformed. A large amount of blood gushed out from its facial features and wounds, and its huge body fell to the side weakly, raising a cloud of dust. Li Mingze shook off the tank blood on his body and climbed out of the pit. System, record the tank beast's weaknesses. Its abdomen is very soft. You can consider using anti-armor mines to injure it, Li Mingze said as he chased after Unisa and others. Tens of minutes later, the three of them arrived at the door of the intelligence department's safe house. After Li Mingze entered the password, the door of the safe house opened directly, revealing neatly stacked weapons and equipment and 4 military power armors. After leaving Unisa to change the power armor by herself, Li Mingze and others turned around and walked to the door to wait. After a while, Unisa, who was carrying 3 long spears, appeared at the door. "You look pretty good in this outfit," Li Mingze patted Unisa on the shoulder and praised. The power armor that can automatically adapt to the body shape perfectly shows Unisa's curvy figure, and the red paint that Unisa chose herself directly attracted Li Mingze's attention. "Let's go, let's move on." Li Mingze turned around and led the team to walk carefully towards the set target. The crowd walked carefully between the high-rise buildings. Although they encountered Zerg troops several times in the middle, they were easily solved by them. The Zerg has not invested many troops on this planet. It seems that this is really just their testing ground. Stova looked at the Zerg mantises that crawled sporadically outside the window and said softly, "The fewer their numbers, the better. We are going to cross a 70-kilometer wilderness next. We must find a way to deceive these Zergs." Li Mingze frowned, turned off the telescope function of his helmet, and turned away from the window. "I think we can use the quick transportation rocket," Unisa said aside. "Oh? What is the quick transportation rocket?" Li Mingze asked curiously. How come he didn't know that there was such a means of transportation in the Empire? "This thing was developed by a private transportation production company on our planet. In order to facilitate us farmers to travel between farms and cities, we can spend money to install transportation stations on the farms. If you want to travel between the two places, you only need to take their transportation rockets. This transportation rocket can reach a speed of 30 times the speed of sound, which is much faster than our own hovercraft." Unisa pointed to a platform extending from the high-rise building. There were less than half of the 100 rocket launch slots on the platform. It seems that many people took rockets to escape back to their farms when the Zerg attacked. "Let's go." Li Mingze nodded and trotted towards the platform. A few minutes later, everyone arrived safely at the transportation rocket launch platform, and Li Mingze was finally able to clearly see the full picture of these rockets. Each rocket, more than 4 meters high, was in the shape of a teardrop, with 4 tail fins on the small tail. There was also a thruster on the rocket body, and an escalator extended all the way to the cockpit door 2 meters above the ground. Uni walked up an escalator to the door of the rocket and pulled open the glass hatch to reveal the seats inside. "The steps are very simple, just go in and find the traffic station around our target point, or when you fly to the middle, pull down this emergency ejection button. Of course this is a paid service." Unisa chuckled twice and sat in the cockpit. Li Mingze and others also found a rocket and sat in it. When the glass hatch slowly closed, a selection map appeared in front of him. "There is no traffic station around our target point, we can only eject in the middle," Li Mingze said helplessly after a careful search. "Understood." Everyone chose a route that passed the target point. "The traffic rocket is about to be launched, please fasten your seat belts." With a prompt sound, 11 rockets slowly took off into the air, and suddenly accelerated and rushed into the sky in mid-air. 20 kilometers from the destination, the rocket is still accelerating. 5 kilometers from the destination. Everyone eject. The rocket had just taken off and arrived above the target location. Li Mingze and others directly pulled the rocket's ejection button, and the rocket's hatch suddenly popped open. Flames shot out from behind the seats and sent everyone out of the rocket cockpit. At this time, the insect swarms on the ground were attracted by the 22 small black dots in the air, and the scorpion's tail stingers were pointed at the sky. "Damn it! Launch the honeycomb missiles," Li Mingze shouted when he saw the situation was not good. The shoulder armor of all the Spartan warriors popped up, revealing a row of small missiles. "Load antimatter. Blow them up and we will scan their wreckage directly," Li Mingze ordered in the communication. 10 antimatter missiles flew out from the soldiers and shot towards the ground, but there was no reaction after these missiles hit the ground. "Everyone pay attention to the impact," Stow shouted to everyone. Under Unisa's puzzled gaze, 10 huge earth mounds suddenly rose from the ground, and then 10 destructive energies broke through the mounds and spread in all directions. The Zergs touched by this visible energy were vaporized one after another, and those that were farther away were lucky enough to have their bodies intact. Chapter 599, Hidden Fleet. The violent explosion blew up a huge deep pit with a diameter of hundreds of meters on the ground. Countless oil was thrown into the air, blocking the sight of Li Mingze and others. When the dust cleared, Li Mingze and others saw that there were dozens of underground passages under this huge bomb crater. Eunice's face froze. These passages meant that most of the Zerg had moved underground, which could also explain why they saw so few Zerg in the city. This also meant that the people hiding in the underground shelters were probably in danger. What are the Zerg trying to do? There are no important resources underground on this planet, and there are no troops on this planet. Li Mingze looked at the passage under his feet in confusion. Your Majesty, this tunnel is the widest. I suspect it is their main road. Why don't we follow this passage to see what is at the end of it? Stow pointed to a huge hole with a diameter of 30 meters, not far from the bomb crater, and said to Li Mingze. Everyone controlled the jet seats and rushed towards the hole. After a few breaths, the seats landed smoothly on the underground passage dug by the Zerg. Unlike what Li Mingze and others thought, the ground of this passage was covered with a layer of unknown mucus, making the ground of the passage extremely smooth. Go, go, go. Li Mingze, who was walking in front, saw that Eunice was a little hesitant and hurriedly urged. Eunice, who was a little scared, gritted her teeth and followed Li Mingze and others into the dark passage. Along the way, everyone only dared to use the night vision function on the helmet, and no one dared to turn on the lights on the main passage of the Zerg. Everyone's body was covered with the flesh and blood of the insects to cover up the human breath. Suddenly, a vibration came from the front of the passage. Li Mingze hurriedly made a stop gesture, indicating that everyone should stop. As the vibration became stronger and stronger, a sound like waves came from not far away. Everyone go to the top of the passage, Li Mingze shouted and reached out to insert his hands into the compacted soil on both sides of the passage and climbed up the passage. Others followed Li Mingze's example and climbed to the top of both sides of the passage. When they looked down at the ground, they saw an endless sea of insects coming from the front of the passage like a tide. These insects pressed their bellies against the ground, and the limbs on both sides of their bodies slid on the ground like oars. In this way, all the insects slid forward quickly with the help of the mucus on the ground. In a blink of an eye, the place where everyone was standing was submerged by the sea of insects. Eunice couldn't help swallowing her saliva. If she hadn't hidden in time, she would have been submerged by the sea of insects now, and she would definitely be eaten to pieces. Everyone, don't do anything, just wait for these insects to pass, Li Mingze whispered in the communication channel. At this time, any abnormality might be discovered by these insects. Thanks to the good stealth performance of the power armor and the layer of Zerg flesh and blood on their bodies, Li Mingze and his companions were not discovered by the swarm of insects that passed by quickly. After more than 40 minutes, the Zerg swarm disappeared at the end of the passage. Li Mingze and others couldn't help but sigh. In the past 40 minutes, at least 300,000 Zergs had passed by. There are definitely not as many Zerg soldiers on this planet as we know. The soldiers they deployed on this planet must be far beyond our expectations, Li Mingze said to the team members with a serious face. We will know what conspiracy the Zerg has when we reach the top of the passage. Stow nodded and jumped down from the height first. Everyone let go and fell to the ground, and walked quickly to the front of the passage. However, the road was too slippery, which greatly interfered with everyone's speed. After walking for a while, Li Mingze and others simply learned to slide on the ground like the Zerg. Everyone lay on the ground, with their legs folded and raised, and at the same time, a gap between their legs was exposed to observe the situation ahead. Everyone used their hands to poke hard on the ground, and the 11 people began to slowly accelerate and slide forward. As time went by, everyone's movements became more and more skilled, and the speed of sliding became faster and faster. The 11 people moved forward quickly in the passage, and the walls on both sides of the passage quickly passed by. Fortunately, although they encountered several waves of Zerg swarms along the way, they were all avoided by climbing up the passage. After walking and stopping for several hours, everyone finally saw light at the end of the passage. Li Mingze and others stopped sliding and walked forward instead. As they got closer and closer to the end of the passage, the blue sky with white clouds appeared in front of them. It seems that the passage leads to the outside, not to some Zerg underground base, Stow shrugged and said to Li Mingze. Hush. Li Mingze made a gesture to silence himself and walked carefully to the end of the passage. When he turned his eyes to the outside, he saw the Zerg transport ships that stretched as far as the eye could see. These transport ships were densely parked in a huge basin that was originally an ocean, and countless Zerg were shuttling between these transport ships. At the same time, a large number of Zerg warships appeared from the clouds in the sky and flew to the ground in the distance. This, Eunice and others followed up. They opened their mouths wide when they saw the scene outside. "Why didn't our warships in orbit find these warships?" Stao asked Li Ming softly. "How do I know? The number of Zerg that can be transported by so many warships is definitely not a small number. It may be hundreds of millions, or billions, or tens of billions." Li Ming shook his head and muttered to himself. "Release the drone for reconnaissance." Li Ming turned his head and ordered a soldier. The soldier took out a metal rod from his back, and the metal rod began to slowly reshape under the gaze of everyone. Soon a small drone appeared in front of everyone. As Li Ming set the route, the drone took off into the distance. I don't know if it's because the drone stealth system is too good or the Zerg is unwilling to pay attention to such a small thing. No Zerg intercepted the drone. The drone quickly passed through the Zerg transport fleet and flew high into the sky, but when it left the ground at an altitude of 100 kilometers, it found that it could not detect these warships through the scanner. These warships seem to release some kind of position when they are parked, which allows them to be invisible within 100 kilometers, Stova reported to Li Ming's while looking at the data of the drone. "Order the drone to lower its altitude and count the Zerg warships that have landed on this planet." Li Ming's nodded and replied. Chapter 600, Burrowing Worms. The drone lowered its altitude slightly and began to fly quickly at low altitude. It returned to Li Ming's and others in dozens of minutes. "Your Majesty, according to reconnaissance, there are 300,000 small Zerg orbital transport ships, 50,000 medium-sized orbital transport ships, and 10,000 large orbital transport ships on Fuxi Star. The number of the enemy's warships is unknown, but they are definitely on standby in space. It is estimated that the number of Zerg ground units that these transport ships can carry can reach 180 billion. Of course, this data is calculated based on the smallest mantis. If the enemy carries large units, the number will be further reduced." Stao told Li Ming's the estimated number. 180 billion. Before Li Ming spoke, Eunice exclaimed. This exclamation directly attracted the attention of the Zerg swarm below the cave entrance. The insects suddenly raised their heads and looked at Li Ming's and others. "Sorry," Eunice smiled awkwardly. "Run." Li Ming's took Stova's hand and ran out of the cave. They could only survive by going to an open place to call for support from the warship hidden in the orbit. Escape back to the tunnel would only lead to death. Without any hesitation, everyone quickly followed Li Ming's footsteps, and a group of people ran madly towards the beach that was originally the ocean. "Spartan team calls the Dongshan warship. We need to evacuate immediately." Li Ming's connected the communication on the warship while running. "Dongshan received. The spacecraft is expected to arrive above you in 10 minutes. Li Ming's communicator received the reply from the crew on the warship. At this time, the swarm of insects had caught up, led by the fastest mantis, whose 6 limbs were raised and dropped rapidly on the ground. "We can't outrun them. Get ready to fight." Li Ming's looked at the sea of insects less than 10 meters away from them and shouted to the team members. After that, he stopped and turned around to aim his rifle at the rushing swarm of insects, and the other team members also stopped and drew their guns to aim. Fire! With Li Ming's roar, bullets shot out from the rifle. The power of the specially modified Spartan special weapon is not comparable to that of ordinary military weapons. Bullets pierced through the bodies of the rushing insects and tore their companions behind them to pieces. Although Li Ming's and his team used physical ammunition, because they were in the Empire, the ammunition for all weapons could be directly manufactured through their internal printing equipment. Theoretically, as long as they were given time to manufacture, these weapons would have unlimited ammunition. The only thing that limited their firing rate was the high temperature of the weapons. Li Ming's and his 11 companions frantically pulled the trigger at these insects, and the bullets shot out formed a long fire dragon, piercing all objects on the road. At this time, the insect swarm suddenly dispersed to both sides, and 10 tank beasts ran towards the crowd. Switch antimatter ammunition. While issuing the order, Li Ming's directly switched the switch on the gun to special ammunition, antimatter mode. Bullets with a trace of antimatter inside were sent into the magazine, waiting to be fired. While the others were still switching the antimatter mode of their guns, Li Ming's had already pulled the trigger first. An antimatter bullet shot out, and when it hit the tank beast, The position storing the antimatter disappeared directly. The entire body of the tank beast was directly annihilated into energy, and the violent shock waves spread out in all directions. The remaining 9 tank beasts did not react, and their bodies were torn apart and thrown into the air. When the dust settled, a huge crater appeared in the original place, and the original tank beast had disappeared. I didn't expect it to be so powerful. Mingze touched his mask awkwardly, not expecting that one bullet could do it. Hold on for a while, the battleship will arrive soon. Stahl glanced at the terminal unreminded. Suddenly, there was a violent vibration under the feet of everyone, and the vibration became stronger and stronger. Mingze and others noticed something was wrong and hurriedly started the thrusters on their bodies. The thrusters on their bodies suddenly sprayed out flames and sent several people into the air. But it was too late. A huge worm with a diameter of 30 meters opened its mouth and rushed into the air from the ground, swallowing Mingze and others directly into its belly. At the moment of being swallowed, Mingze suddenly understood how the Zerg's underground passage was dug, and it must have something to do with this worm. Mingze, who was swallowed into the worm's belly, felt as if his body had fallen into the sea, and was surrounded by unknown liquid. Warning, the armor is being corroded, and it is expected that the armor will be penetrated in 57 hours. The terminal in front of Mingze suddenly popped up a warning. At this time, the worm's body pierced the ground again, and under the action of the circles of sharp teeth on its head, the worm quickly re-entered the underground. They must not let this worm take them too deep. Once the warship cannot pick them up and evacuate in time, they may be surrounded and annihilated by the Zerg fleet, and they will be completely finished. Mingze thought about it and ordered everyone to switch their weapons to high explosive mode, aiming at the inner wall of the worm and firing bullets together. The high explosive bomb exploded suddenly after attacking the inner wall of the worm, and the violent explosion caused the worm to tremble. However, the explosion did not cause much damage to it, and its wound soon healed completely. "Captain, how about we use antimatter bullets?" Stova asked Mingze in the communication channel. "Do you want to kill us? At such a close distance, once our dimensional armor absorbs the energy, we will soon be dissolved by the acid in this guy's body." Mingze hurriedly stopped him. At this moment, Mingze and others suddenly felt that the body of the worm was rushing upwards again. It was obvious that it wanted to return to the surface for some reason. "Stova, has our warship arrived?" Mingze suddenly asked with his eyes brightened. "Our warship will reach our sky in 3 seconds, Stova nodded affirmatively. "Very good, order the warship to attack the worm body 15 meters in front of us." Mingze smiled with a confident smile. In the sky, the Dongshan warship had just passed through the clouds and arrived above the coordinates of Mingze and others when it received Mingze's order. A gun turret under the battleship suddenly opened up and aimed at the empty ground. At this moment, a huge black worm emerged from the ground, exposing its body to the air. Seizing the opportunity, the Dongshan battleship immediately aimed at the worm's body that rushed into the air and fired a shell. The power of the ship's shells was far beyond the reach of Mingze and others' rifles. A shell from the secondary gun directly cut it in half. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone, see you in the next video.